All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another much delayed, 7-month delayed, I think, episode of Excess Exceed. It's been a harrowing journey coming back to the microphone. I'm sitting here at a new desk with a new computer with 2 new monitors, 2 new speakers, a new microphone, a new operating system, and a new guest. Calavontis is here today. Hello, Calavontis. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Gear. Hi, everyone else.
We are talking about a new character today, which is what we do on the show. We're talking about Umina, possibly pronounced Umina. We'll maybe never know for sure. I'm told that Calavontis is the expert to consult on a character of this complexity and difficulty. So super excited. I know, characteristically, I know nothing about Umina, who I'm very excited to learn. If you are new to the show, which I am because it's been long enough, this is a show where I, ostensible Exceed novice, badger an Exceed expert to tell me all about their favorite character until I know everything that they know and can then defeat them on the field of combat. I don't think that's actually going to happen or has ever happened, but we don't have to worry too much about that. Couple disclaimers before we get started, as always. I think, as always, we'll see. Number one is we're going to be talking about playing Exceed to win on this show. And that's not the only way that you should play Exceed, or that you can play Exceed. You should play Exceed for fun. Sometimes playing to win and playing for fun don't always line up. If the lines of play that we're talking about on this show don't sound fun to you, don't play that way. Play a more fun way. And then number two is Exceed's not a solved game. This is a pretty old and storied character, and Calavontis is definitely an expert on Umina. That doesn't mean that Calavontis' opinion is the only one. If you hear us misrepresent a line that you really think is worth talking about, don't think that because me and Calavontis have the mic that we're correct and you're wrong. Go find your own lines of play. Tell us why we're wrong. We would love to hear from you. But yeah, with all of that aside, I am extremely excited and a little bit afraid to learn about Umina. So Calavontis, who is this lady? Tell me about her.
That's a great question. Umina is a character from Season 2 of Exceed. Notably, the season where a lot of people consider to be the most card game heavy set of characters. Notably because of transformations, give permanent bonuses, and abilities unlocks new things for the character to use and deploy throughout the match.
Right.
So it feels like there's some engine building. There's more tableau building, like from other board games, right? Like there's more permanency to things you do.
Sure, you're playing to build the board more, right? Like
exactly.
When I'm playing Ryu over here and I put a boost down and then the strike ends and the boost is over. What's changed is I have Gauge now, and that's like a semi-permanent addition to the board. But Umina's got these things that will hang around for the rest of the game once they're in play, right?
Exactly.
I get you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it feels definitely like all Season 2 characters. Well, at least most of them. You feel a little weaker than usual starting off, but you should be building yourself towards a end game or something that feels much more powerful. At least in theory. And I think Umina definitely could fall into that category, but that's not the only thing she does. That makes her very unique.
Okay. So the archetypal 7th Cross character is somebody like Jeanette, or so. Jeanette just came up in Breakfast Club. 10 minutes ago. You've got somebody who drops a couple transformations that are all these like little interlocking engine pieces that feed into each other and make her sort of like create this perpetual motion engine, and then she exceeds and flips out and murders you dead, having spent all of her time building this engine, and her reward is that she gets to kill you with it. And that's sort of like the 7th Cross experience in general. Should I expect that sort of line of play to be what I'm doing with Umina? Or is she one of the more atypical ones who doesn't really... I know that there are some 7th Cross characters who don't really exceed at all, for example. What should I be expecting from playing her?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, while we're on the topic of like whether or not to exceed a seventh cross character, I think Umina is one of those cases that it's very match dependent, right? A lot of characters are match dependent in terms of if they should exceed at all or when they should exceed in a matchup. But I think Umina is one of those characters that requires the most consideration.
Okay.
Because her style of play drastically changes from one thing or another, and your options drastically changes from one form and another. But notably, she has the second lowest, I believe, cost to exceed. You only need two transformations before it costs 0 gauge to exceed with her, so it's relatively easy. The lowest is turn lose, but
Right.
turn lose, which is 0 cost, by the way, and you're not really supposed to have a cost on him, so I don't even really count him. So she's probably she's the easiest to actually exceed in a meaningful way.
Yeah, if you exceed super early as Turnalas, you're kind of throwing the game away because you're neglecting your ability to actually build the engine you're going to use to kill somebody. So his exceed cost is like 0 plus a sensible number of transforms, and that's probably more than what Umina actually needs in practice. Okay.
Exactly.
So what I know about this character, again, characteristically, my job on this show is to be a complete novice and not know anything. But I know that she's got weird Eldritch horror vibes. We're probably going to be seeing lots of madness ideas going across her cards. The other thing I know about her, pretty infamously, is that she's like a rules nightmare.
Just tons of rules nightmare with her cards.
There's a well-maintained community document of errata and FAQs and just sort of general rules questions that D maintains. I'll link that in the video description. Most of them, to my understanding, Calavontis, are like edge case. Probably in 99% of the games that you're playing aren't going to come up. Maybe in one matchup where somebody has an X in their power value, or they do something with face down cards, you might have a question. But for the most part, can we ignore some of the thornier rules questions that Umina generates, or are there some that are actually like important enough to how she plays the game that we're going to have to talk about them and cover them?
Off top of my head, I don't think there's specifically ones we have to like bring up right now, in order to understand like what she actually does. But I think it is very thematic that, being an Eldritch horror where like the whole theme is like madness, you kind of get insane, like you lose your mind just reading through her text and like her rules, right? Like I think that's like
the rules are falling apart trying to contain. No, that actually kind of works.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That is like one of the best favorite parts about the character, not just mechanically, but also like lore wise, I guess.
It's a cool vibe, right? Like, sure. Actually, this is probably worth mentioning now. My partner, one of her favorite characters in the set is Umina. So if you could like teach me incorrectly, like give me all the wrong information so that I don't have to put up with her Umina, that'd be really convenient for me. Like jokes aside, the character's aesthetic is so appealing and so interesting. I feel like that's one of the big strengths of Seventh Cross in general, that you're gonna wind up with like the characters have a vibe to them that I think is very cool.
You asked me a question earlier about like what she actually does, and I kind of fell on a tangent talking about exceed timing and whatnot. I like if I was trying to summarize her in like 1 or 2 sentences in terms of what she overall does, the way I see her would be she is ultimately a very disruptive character. Some people will call her a control character in Exceed, where she specializes in exploiting opponents' weaknesses and denying their strength, using a kit of rather unconventional tools with, like you mentioned, very weird rule text, ruling sometimes with edge cases.
And to your point that you mentioned about like, does she exceed, does she not exceed? Your answer there was it's very matchup dependent. That kind of makes sense for a character who is working to deny another character's game plan and being a controlling, sort of countering character. if you go in, it sounds like if you go into a game with Umina with like a very defined one-size-fits-all game plan in mind, you're going to be ignoring a lot of her strengths. Like, it sounds like
that's
this is a character who I sort of, in order to find success with her, I'm going to need to know the matchup, not just what she personally does. Is that true?
Yes, that's 100% what I was going for.
Okay.
Just like another higher level. Like, again, this is all my own take on the game, right? If there are certain characters on a scale of like, I rank a lot of characters on a scale of how proactive, how disruptive they are. This is kind of like a scale that they used to use in competitive EDH in Magic the Gathering.
Sure.
Since Exceed is a 1v1 fighting game, obviously you should always care about the matchup, but some characters care much less about their opponent's abilities over their own, right? A classic example would be sort of, in my opinion, right, like Bang. Bang Shaken, don't remember his last name. Bang from Season 5, right?
Sure.
You're just trying to get cards, get your specials engaged, you're trying to set up advantage chains, you're trying to set up good recursion with Band-style Shuriken. And overall, you're really focused on what you're doing for yourself. I mean, you obviously still care about your opponent, but you're really trying to accelerate your own game plan. And basically, it's going to be more or less the same premise every matchup.
No matter
Sometimes
who you're
it could
fighting.
be whoever you're fighting. Sometimes it might be different set of cards you want in your gauge, but ultimately, you're a character that wants to do that. A lot of Season 2 characters have the same thing, right? Zolt, that he just wants to transform and exceed ASAP and start setting up unbeatable attack chains. Those are very proactive characters because they have a dominant plan that they're always going to go for. There are characters in the middle ground where they have tools that disrupt people, but they also have their own game plan going on. I think most character falls in somewhere in between those extremes. And Umina, I think she's all the way on the other end, towards being very disruptive. You should care more about what your opponent can do and what your opponent wants to do than what you would want to do personally. And that's how I personally see this character.
Okay.
So yeah, with that, that's the kind of mindset I'm going when I talk about being disruptive, being in control, and being adaptive to the MU. Everyone should be adaptive to their matchup, but especially if you're playing Umina.
Okay, sure, that makes sense. Yeah, it's like some characters are incentivized to, as quickly as they can, like turn Exceed into a one-player game, where I don't have to care about what my opponent does anymore because I have the line. It sounds like Umina, I should expect the game to be a two-player game as long as... Well, until I win, I should expect the game to be a two-player game because my win condition is to make it a one-player game where I've controlled their options so much that there's nothing more that they can do to me. Is that kind of right?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Shall we get into how I'm actually going to go about controlling my opponent like this?
Yeah. I guess we should go over her actual kit and just brief over them. Is that what you had in mind, or?
Yeah, I was thinking probably like character ability first. I noticed that she has a whole extra card down here called the Dreamlands that probably is worth explaining, and then maybe going into the kit itself. So when I'm starting the game as Umina, I'm this Umina. I'm not
who's that? Yeah.
The big screaming octopus Umina.
Yep.
So as an action, you may put a card from your hand into your Dreamlands. My Dreamlands are down here. And this is outside the game, right? This isn't on a space or anything like that. It's not. This
is like a separate zone.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a sealed area, but not a sealed area. It's like
Sure.
a separate zone where it contains exactly one card.
Yeah, analogous to like Renea's briefcase or Jeanette's, not her magic circle, but
I think demonic auras.
Yeah, her demonic aura.
Yeah.
Just it's not in the game itself, but it says discard any cards here before a new one is placed. You may strike with this card. When you strike with this card or a copy of this card, you have stun immunity. Okay, that's some pretty strong text. So, knowing nothing about the cards in general, as an action, I could take this copy of Assault, put it into my Dreamlands, and then whenever a strike happens, offense or defense, I can just say, okay, I Assault, and the Assault is stun immune if I think that that's going to do well into what my opponent is doing. And if I have the other copy of Assault in my hand, I play that one. That one is also stun immune.
That's exactly how that works. Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Typically, your turn 1 is probably just going to be, as an action, put a card from your hand into your Dreamland. Otherwise, you don't really have a UA until, you don't really have a UA until this card. There's a card in here.
Right. This is like, all this does is indicate that I can stock the Dreamland. The Dreamland itself is where all the power comes from. So in order to have anything going for me, I sort of need something in here. Right. I'm assuming that I'm going to have other ways that we'll get to put cards into my Dreamland.
Yeah, you'd be right on that. Yeah, we'll get to that once we go over those cards specifically. But at the minimum case, you just have to spend an action and you get a card of your choice from your hand into your Dreamland. Okay. And this is significant in the sense that it fundamentally gives you a stun immune on any card, although your opponent sees it coming. But notably, it has great interaction with, like you earlier mentioned, Assault, right? Assault at range 3 is good, but often what you're afraid of is that at range 1 you get stunned out by something faster.
Sure.
But like a Grasp or sometimes Cross. But being able just to have a stun immune on a mid speed that has great hit confirm like Assault it basically gives you a tool that guarantees certain traits. Sure. A lot of characters rely on hitting fast and stunning you, and to win trades. But this fundamentally gives you like a baseline where you're like, I can take trades. You cannot just stun me and ignore me.
Right. Stun immune Assault is good for the same reason that like Defend Assault is good. Where I'm at range 1, I've got enough guard that I probably won't get stunned. I won't get stunned if I'm playing it from Dreamlands. So it's good to have things in my Dreamlands. Over the course of this conversation, we're probably going to come up with specific things that I want in my Dreamlands that we can talk about those in particular. For this action, though, in terms of I want something in my Dreamlands, how often is what I want going to be coming from this action? Or am I more going to be leaning on like some characters who, like, for example, Bang's character ability, we have him out just as an example. Bang Prep is something that he will do like when he doesn't have anything else to do. Or I don't know, like Devris, who spends a life to get a gauge. He'd rather do other things. Is Umina's ability like one of the primary ways that I'm going to be stocking my Dreamlands and I should be expecting to use it very frequently? Or is it more like I actually have better things to do hiding in my kit somewhere, but I don't have access to those right now, so I'll use her ability?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in general, I can think that I probably will use her UA 2 or 3 times. I definitely obviously use it at least once, probably at the start of the game.
Right.
9 out of 10 times. But there are games where you spoiler alert, you could take your opponent's card into the Dreamland.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
That's something you could do. I know if you haven't read the kit, that would be like the wildest thing you have heard. But let's just start off this conversation strong. Like, yes, you could take your opponent's tool and put it in your Dreamland and use them as something you could use during strikes. And sometimes you get a really powerful card and you kind of just want there for the rest of the game, and that could happen.
I see.
And
okay,
that's
so
perfectly valid.
so the dream of the Dreamlands, the fantasy of the Dreamlands that we're talking about when we're only looking at this card is that I get stun immunity. Awesome. I'm super excited about having stun immunity on a thing. But it also means that if I put my own Assault in here, it's a threat that I could just have for the rest of the game.
Stun immune Assault all the time.
Until I use it, it's another thing in my hand that doesn't take up a card slot. If I steal an opponent's card, not only is it a threat of mine until it goes away, you can't. I assume you can't like tech something out of the Dreamlands or anything like that.
Right? Yeah, it's not your hand. You cannot parry.
Right, you can't parry it. It's just there.
Yeah.
But it also means that until I use it, they can't have it.
Yeah, it's not interactable. Nothing in the game that actually can force Umina, without her own abilities, I guess, to lose a card from Dreamland. Yeah.
So if I steal my opponent's focus because I know that they want to play reading, and hey, focus is awesome. I would love to have a copy of focus. I'll use it sometimes to, if I don't think stun immune focus is going to be relevant all the time, but cool, I can use focus. Or I just sit on it forever because my opponent would like this focus and I don't want to let them have it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. You could absolutely do that. Keep in mind also that if you do play that focus from the Dreamland and it hits and it goes to your gauge, you also effectively steal it and until you use that gauge. Okay. So sometimes the steal is just permanent, and but you still have to land the hit and find ways to add it.
If I spend that gauge, it would then go to my opponent's discard, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. At which point they could reshuffle to get it back into circulation. But at minimum, if I steal a card from their deck into my Dreamlands, they shouldn't expect to get it back for like a good long time. And I'm the one who gets to control when exactly they get it back.
Yeah, and a lot of times, people would do things like, keep a card an opponent has in my Dreamland. I don't even really want it, but I know they really want it.
I just don't want you to have it.
Yeah, and then as soon as they reshuffle, I know they have no way of getting it back. Then I spend it, and they don't get it anyway. So
so you're playing this game of brinksmanship where they're trying to make you spend it before they reshuffle, so that they can get it back on the second round, and you're trying to wait until they have to reshuffle so that you can keep the card out of their hands forever. Interesting. Okay.
That happens more often than one might think. But to go farther on the point, we should also look at probably the shape soon to see, okay, how do you actually get your opponent's card in?
Yeah, let's go through the cards. And also you mentioned that that Umina's Exceed mode is a very different style of play. Would it make more sense to talk through like everything else that she can do and then flip over and read what happens in Exceed mode?
I do think so, because Exceed mode is basically you're trading off certain possible playstyle in certain lines for other lines.
Okay.
And that kind of I feel like that requires you. You kind of need to know the base kit first before deciding.
That sounds great.
Before I can talk about things that makes more sense. At least I think. To start off, I think we should talk about probably her most prominent card. It's probably Dark Thoughts, in my opinion. This is
I've heard of Dark Thoughts. I've heard
Dark Thoughts
is a pretty heinous card.
Yeah. Dark Thoughts is the thing. If you're playing against Umina, it's the thing you want to deny her the most. It's her highest damaging card, printed power.
Right.
For now, and it has one of the most powerful transformation in the game. Probably the transformation that dictates, yes, this is a control character. A lot of people sees this and they be like, that's just the most obnoxious thing I ever seen. Okay. And they'll be correct. So let's go over the shape real fast. It's a 2-5 sweep. So it's just sweep.
I was gonna say, even like you mentioned, it's got a really heinous transformation on it. It's parry bait. It's all this stuff. But literally, just looking at the stats, it's like, oh yeah, it's a ranged copy of one of the strongest cards in Exceed.
Yeah.
Okay. We're starting
one of the best normals. Yeah. Plus 1-2 range sweep. And hit. You sweep a card, but you also can add that card to your Dreamland. So we were talking about other ways of putting cards in Dreamland. This is one way. If you hit, you steal a card from your opponent's hand. That's great and all, right? Like that's self-contained. You basically you not only sweep a card, but you basically draw an extra card that you could use.
Right.
So like that's already great value. It's a range tool. But also, let's look at the transformation. And in case people forget, like you can transform a card and permanently get that ability of the transformation if you land with the attack, or if you discard both copies, you can transform with the copy from your hand.
Right.
So this says if a card is in your Dreamland, if a card is in your Dreamlands, the opponent cannot boost using copies of that card, and copies of that card are invalid for the opponent.
That's
So
insane.
basically, that's like the most controlling ability ever printed, probably. But basically saying if I have a focus in my Dreamland, I have this transform. All your focus in your deck is pretty much doesn't do anything. You
Right.
can't use them to strike. It would just be invalid. You have to turn them into a wild swing. You cannot boost with the card on focus, which is reading, a very powerful boost. And so you better just spend them for force, right?
Right. So obviously,
Um,
in the mirror matchup, when my opponent has a copy of Terror Whispers or Out of Mind or something, this works for my specials as well. And obviously, if I steal one of their cards through something like Dark Thoughts, the copy of the card doesn't do anything. But if
yeah,
it's my normal, if it's my copy of Dive, both of their copies of Dive are turned off because it's the same card.
correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's unreal. That's really,
It's
really
very
scary.
powerful. Yeah.
So I'm assuming then, from Umina's perspective, this is priority number one. I want this transformation as quick as I can get it. And I assume, similarly, if we're standing in opening positions and I put down a card to strike with, my opponent's like, that's Dark Thoughts, and they have to play around it because the prospect of getting hit by this is deadly.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I think people joke that if a Umina strikes, you always have to play pretending as if it could be a Dark Thoughts.
You
You
just assume it's Dark
Yeah.
Thoughts. Okay.
Because your life would be so bad if Dark Thought come online. Like the faster it comes online, the worse your life is gonna be. That's just how it is.
So from opening positions, it's a 2 to 5, speed 2. You can dive over it. And
dive is easy answer.
And get to range 1.
You can cross out too. Yeah.
You can cross out because it doesn't hit out to range 6. But if you're even like one more space toward the corner, or if you're at range 2, for example, where cross will still land in the range band, like it seems like just as printed without any sort of invalidation shenanigans or other things, it's like pretty tough to make Dark Thoughts 100% guaranteed. But it seems like it's very easy to make it a threat that the opponent has to worry about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's meant to be hard to hit, and for a good reason.
Sure.
Yeah. If I was playing against Umina and they initiate at range 2, I'm just slamming Spike if I have it. If I don't have any other choice, just to avoid Dark Thoughts.
You just assume it's Dark Thoughts every single time.
Yeah. I would slam Spike. Yeah.
And if you're wrong and they assaulted you and you whiffed with your Spike, you're like, oh man, well at least I didn't get hit by Dark Thoughts.
Yeah, and at least they're not in position for Dark Thoughts after that, because they're at range 1 now. I'll take it. I was like, all right, I'll take 4 damage and give you an extra turn just to avoid that.
You definitely lost that strike, but like, did you lose that strike?
Yeah.
Okay, it's that kind of card. So
yeah, it's that kind of card.
So my opponent's going to do everything that they can to make sure I don't have this. I'm going to do everything I can to get it. When some characters, like I'm thinking about, like Joffrey is another sort of, actually his compulsive purification kind of reminds me of this. Like the game is so different if I have it versus if I don't. I sort of need like, it's like I would do a separate excess succeed lesson on Joffrey if he had compulsive purification versus if he didn't.
Yeah, no, it's that kind of card. Yeah,
it's that kind of card. Yeah. So should I? It doesn't sound like my opponent will let me have this often enough that I should assume that I'm going to get it, because it isn't free to hit. It's going to be work. I can't afford to go into the game with the game plan of assuming that I already have Dark Thoughts. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I say that's correct. You kind of assume it'd be nice if you land it. Your life would be great if you can land it, but chances are you have to assume your opponent also knows that, and they'll do everything in their power. Notably with Joffrey has a disgusting boost on his Ultra that lets him transform a card, just straight up, without having to land it or without having to have both copies. So even if you parry a copy of whatever the card that transformation on Joffrey, compulsive.
I think it might be Inquisition, but it's compulsive purification. It's the card with compulsive purification on it. No one's ever played it as an attack.
Yeah, with Umina, like I expect turn 1 parry Dark Thoughts.
Okay.
I perfectly expect that. It's a good move. She doesn't really have ways of getting that copy back in her hand and EX transform it.
And she doesn't have ways to cheat a transform into play the way that a Joffrey or a Taisei or somebody like that. They can do that.
Taisei, Joffrey, and Eugenia all have ways of cheating transform. She cannot. And
she can't do that.
That's which is unfortunate because but also fair because if she does have it, it'd be really annoying. So that's Dark Thoughts. But to let the viewer kind of know why this ability is so strong, right? And we'll bring it up later. Like as we go through this video, like we'll bring up again and again the power of this boost. But games are won off this like transformation alone. Just because now that I can fight you, knowing that you can never read me, I know you can never have focus, or I could deny cross completely, knowing you can never cross out.
Right.
Things like that fundamentally changes the flow of the game, and again, that's like a big part of her theme, right? Denying your opponent's strength. And we'll look farther into that. Any other questions while we're on Dark Thoughts?
Yeah, it seems like this seems it goes back to what you were saying earlier about how like there isn't you can't really have a single game plan as Umina. You need to adjust to your opponent and what they want to do. Like that is very apparent looking at a boost like this. But it's also like over the course of the game, the value of a given transform is going to change. The value of a given attack or a given boost, rather, in your Dreamlands is going to change a lot. So, like, me as Umina, I need to, it sounds like, be very cognizant of, like, I'm really, really vulnerable to my opponent's tech right now. Now it's been, so I'm going to hold their dive hostage by having dive in my Dreamlands for a long time. Oh, it's been a couple turns. My lights are down now. I maybe don't have any really, really threatening boosts that I'm worried about tech anymore. Now the dive can go and I can get something else that's better. Like I need to update what I'm worried about to make sure that I'm always denying the most relevant thing.
That's part of it. That's a great like theory. An example of a game was when I was playing against someone. I put focusing on Dreamland. It's second reshuffle. It's after the reshuffle. There's no second reshuffle. Then they realize they're never going to be able to play the focus, so they throw the focus away to change cards. They use it as force, and as soon as I see the focus are gone, I switch to another card that's their most dominant.
Right.
So that kind of play pattern allows you to, like your opponent has a lot of pressure on them because assuming you play everything right. Everything they do, they have to think about what you can do to update the state. And something like that, just keep denying cards, is something they have to, like, maybe they need to hold on to the focus just so I don't switch up what's in my Dreamland. Maybe they have to do that. It's tiny things like that makes this character very obnoxious, potentially, to play against.
Right. So, like, looking at, I can think of reasons why I would want to deny my opponent pretty much every card in the normals here. But it seems like the obvious ones that, like, if in the middle of this excess exceed lesson, a viewer for some reason has just decided to start playing a game of Umina and doesn't proceed any further with the lesson. I'm assuming that, like, the cheat sheet is like get their sweep, get their focus, maybe get their cross, and like unless another card presents a really compelling use case, you might be able to, like, the level 1 Umina might be able to end there and just like do a huge
I think you're right.
Just with a couple of these cards.
Yeah, sweep and focus, best normals. Now they can't even be stunned, even if you get spiked. So just give them stun immunity, slap an extra copy or two of focus and sweep into your into your deck. And
and by the way, my opponent can't use them either.
That's if that transforms out, that's even worse.
Both in terms of like what they'll do for me and in terms of how annoying they'll be for my opponent. These are kind of the power cards that I'm looking for in my Dreamlands. But especially once I have this transform in play, I need to be looking at the range of what my opponent actually wants and can benefit from, and update that to make sure that I'm always being as annoying as possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
I probably say before you get that transform, prioritize sweep in your dreamland. After you get that transform, definitely focus.
Sure. Makes sense.
Assuming the same normal. Because season 6 doesn't have
Oh, sure.
reading on the focus,
If you're
right?
really worried about them boosting just defense versus them boosting
Yeah,
light,
sure.
I get you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, against season 6, I will switch my normals up because the boosts are slightly different. But
Right.
yeah,
Maybe
in
watch out for
general,
superior, that kind of thing.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Okay, so
So that's
let's
Dark
see.
Thoughts. Where to
That's
next?
Dark Thoughts. Where to next? I think uh I want to cover Unknown Kadath actually. I mean, this is kind of
Okay. So
like
we're
unconventional.
we're moving
Because
to ultras.
yeah, just real fast because like this is kind of like the bread and butter, and I want to bring as a reason why I prioritize sweep. It's really just for an extra plus power because Unknown Kadath. Let's look at the boost real quick. I know the boost is only 20% of the card, but it's really half the card. And all
Right.
ultras, I would say it's 70% of the card because you can't afford ultras that
You
often.
often
So
can't
it's
afford it. Okay, sure.
yeah, so it's like one of those situations. So let's look at the boost real quick. Dreamtelling is a continuous boost before you check the power of the card in your Dreamland, and you get that power bonus up to 5. So notably is like notably focus versus sweep, you're losing 1 power.
Right.
Uh, it's marginal, but it adds up. And then after add this to gauge. So if I have sweep in my Dreamland, I would play a separate sweep. That's a 11 power Sun Immune sweep.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it
That
is.
gets me 2 gauge. 1 gauge if I don't hit, 2 gauge if I hit. And yeah,
Okay.
you dive or die.
It's
Yeah.
stun immune. You'll always get the after. You can't
Yeah,
not. Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
Her gauge generation is really bad. She doesn't have that. Like she has like Dark Thoughts. If you hit it, you're transforming it. You're not putting as a gauge.
Right.
Other cards. Yeah, you just like a lot of transformations that your gauge is very important actually. We'll go on later why. So this is the few ways of actually getting gauge, but also it's kind of the bread and butter of like imagine a Umina without any abilities. Like imagine a Umina with no transformation play. This is like your biggest threat, right? Like this is it's just that +5 power.
+5 power is an absurd amount. Like they don't print that
Yeah,
number on boosts anymore. They
yeah,
haven't in several seasons.
yeah. Even if we just say assault, if you have a copy of assault and you play assault, it's still an 8 power assault that's stunning immune.
Yeah.
And I would play that at range 1 like all the time probably.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I would love my copy of Grasp with a sweep in Dreamlands to stun my opponent's focus.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
It's yeah, your grass stuns focuses.
That's not supposed
That's
to
just
happen.
yeah, just from one card, just from one boost, right?
Right. So
Um,
I'm assuming by the fact that we're focusing very hard on the boost in this card that I should I mostly be ignoring the ultra that this boost is printed on and just prioritize boosting this at all costs?
not necessarily at all costs, but I think early game it's really important to I mean, if early game, I don't even know if you really want this card in your hand. It
Sure.
depends.
In the very early game, yeah.
Yeah,
You at the very least you need something in your Dreamlands to
yeah.
make it do
I definitely
anything.
wouldn't mind it. I definitely wouldn't mind it as like I have a single copy of this in my starting hand. Obviously, I definitely need something in my that can be put into Dreamland. But if I start off with like Unknown Kadath, I'm not mad about it.
Okay.
But yeah, I probably boost like my turn. It's a classic turn 1, turn 2. Turn 1, you put sweep in there. Turn 2, you boost this, and maybe you put a prep before or after those sequence of actions.
Right.
That's typically my start. Like what I imagine to be a typical start. And a more active opponent will probably move in or parry, Dark Thoughts, or do something similar to counteract. Those are like the starting normals sequence.
Okay.
But I wanted to bring this out also because if Umina plays this, you're thinking, okay, well, my opponent obviously gonna attack this, right?
Right.
Is in the opening position. It's a very tech worthy card. It's you're denying them a force and an ultra, uh, and potentially an extra gauge, and denying them a lot of power. But because this is also constraining the dive, this is
I
forcing
was
your
going to
opponent
say
to use
that's one of the things
dive.
that you're going to use to dodge the
Yeah,
Dark Thoughts.
Exactly. Then your Dark Thoughts become a little bit more potent. So this is
Okay.
why I bring this up just in the opening position. If you want to land Dark Thoughts, you need to also threaten good boosts, and this is her most techable boosts.
Okay.
Actually, it might be her only techable boost because in the special set, because that's the only continuous boost.
Right.
So this is why I look at Anoka Death, and your early game is probably gonna look somewhere between these, like looking at these two with a sweep.
Okay.
Yeah, this is now let's cover the attack real fast. The attack is cool. It's 3 gauge, which is a lot for Umina.
Given what you just said about how important this after effect on the boost is.
Yeah.
And
You
if
only
I'm
need to hit your opponent a few times if you get this off, right? Like if I'm hitting for 11 damage,
right.
I only need to hit my opponent 3 times. So with like her hit confirms overall is not bad. Like she doesn't have that much like above curve. She doesn't have any above curve options really,
Right.
other than her ultras, and you know that's a lot of gauge expenditure. So getting 3 gauge to play this is really a decision that you have to make if it's applicable in your matchup.
Okay.
But this is one of the coolest attacks in the game. I wish it's more common, and it's just before you put your opponent's attack in your dreamland, and add this card to your gauge, and then the strike ends. That's
Okay.
that's
so,
like the ultimate.
so
That's like a time stop, right?
yeah,
Like
I
that's
was
just
gonna
like
say
no.
it's you were talking about EDH a second ago. This is Obeka, right? You just you stop the turn whenever you want. So it's if my opponent plays Grasp into me, that's speed 7. Their attack goes off first. I get stunned, etc., etc.
Oh yeah, that's super sad. Yeah.
Anything slower, but the before timing happens at my speed. So anything on my offense, anything speed 6 or slower, just doesn't happen. I don't.
Correct. Yeah.
I don't get any. Like I spend gauge, I get this attack into my gauge, I get their card into my dreamlands. That's all upside for me. But also, it's a denial tool. They don't get anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Since we're talking about Umina as a disruptive character, I think I want to bring some examples, right? Into like what matchups this attack really makes sense.
Sure.
Definitely because it's speed dependent. You only really want this in matchups where you can reliably use this against specific tools that your opponent is going to want to land. Something that's slow that you cannot counterattack reliably, and then you just need to cancel it to remove that option completely from them.
Okay.
A quick example off the top of my head is Sagat. If you're playing against Sagat, the most Sagat's fantasy is push you to range 6 and beyond and start low tiger shotting
just
you.
Throwing LTS
forever.
at you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the worst case scenario. This card not only stops that, but also take away their low tiger shot.
Yeah.
And you can start low tiger shot them back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in those cases where it's really, really good.
So it's not only is it like it's a card that it has to be a card that's slower than speed 6. It has to be something that like fits these parameters, but also it has to be a card that is so devastating and so scary that your opponent has that you'd be willing to give up a copy of Dream Telling to get rid of it.
Yeah, you're willing to spend 3 gauge, take the risk of the strike. Presumably it's not like face up or known.
So go through the other 118 episodes of Excess Exceed. There's going to be some characters. Fight has explosive shot. Sagat has a low tiger shot. Like the part in the lesson where the expert stops everything and goes, okay, we have to talk about this stupid thing. Actually, Dark Thoughts is a really great example of what that sounds like in these conversations. Not every character has that sort of thing. Some characters have a much more like evened out, less spiky power budget. Yeah. If my opponent doesn't have something that is like Dark Thoughts tier, where this is such a problem, there's nothing I can do about it, that's what I'm saving Unknown Kadath for. Otherwise, it's probably going to be Dream Telling. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, Dream Telling is always good. So Unknown Kadath has to have a really good reason for you to use it. So you'd be correct. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
Also, okay, so since you mentioned fight, I don't think this is actually I mean, this is a little tangent, but like I just want to show you the process I think about.
Sure.
Don't think it's particularly good against fight because he has a lot of range options, and denying one of them doesn't fundamentally
I
change the
see.
outcome, right? Sagat only has low target shot, which is really good card, which is like one of the strongest cards in the game, I'd say.
Right. Right.
And really wants to get to range 6 and then start like spamming it. But because he only has one copy of it, if you can steal that one copy and turn the tables on him, that makes it the investment so much better.
I see. So it's less about like a power card is a power card. Get rid of your opponent's best card. That's cool. But it's more like it needs to be so important that you're getting rid of your opponent's game plan.
Yeah. If it cannot interrupt with the rest of his gameplay, I don't think it's really worth the 3 gauge.
Okay, otherwise, like, Dream Telling is a very compelling use case for this card. It doesn't really need any sort of justification to use it. Unknown Kadath definitely does. And some matchups will give you that justification, and then you'll use it. But otherwise, this is default Dream Telling.
Yep. Okay. Sometimes you need to use it to not die, which is fine. And sometimes you want to play it just to have fun. Like, it's a cool card. It's a really cool card. I wish it's only 2 gauge, but that's probably too little.
Yeah, it's a very unique. It's a weirdo ultra. Looking at something, you don't see this shape very often. It's a weird one to wrap your head around. Okay, so that's
I think
this and this. So far is kind of where we're at, or I guess all of this card, and then Dream Telling. I'm also noticing that the attack side of Unknown Kadath is another way to steal my opponent's attack and put them into Dreamlands. I have at least 2 of those, so it's clearly it's part of a theme at this point. This one is going to be less often a part of my range because it's just not something that I'm going to have the opportunity to play as often. Dark Thought's always
it's a real luxury to be able to play that card. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Where to next?
Yeah, on the theme of, stealing your opponent's cards, but also like her like biggest threats, I'd say. I want to move on to Hollow Space. Very notable card. While the previous 2 cards is kind of what I consider as, like in a perfect world where you can land anything with anything, yes, I would like to land a Dark Thoughts. I would like to get +5 power that's not tacked and hit my opponent.
Right.
Without them crossing out or something. Those are like the ideal world of what you're trying to, like something you want to push for on the front side. But Hollow Space is a very important part of her kit, overall. It's probably, in a vacuum, is probably her best attack shape, I'd say. It's range 3 to 6, speed 4, mid speed 4, and hits for 4. But notably, it has the print attacks at range 1 do not hit you. And this is just a passive effect. And there's nothing to stop it from happening. You cannot like outspeed it to stun it, so if you're at range 1, and has an after advance or retreat 3. Hollow Space is a very strong defensive tool, and one of the reasons why it's so hard to kill Uminas. If we look at the board,
let's move some cards here.
Maybe. Let's just go over opening position and whatnot.
I mean, the obvious objection to what you're saying is that this card doesn't hit at range 1 where the range dodge is, but thinking about that, like there's quite a few examples where that doesn't particularly matter, because a lot of the things that my opponent can do at a given range involve moving into range 1. Like if they're at 3, Hollow Space turns off their assault. At range 4, it turns off their dive. Interesting.
If we just look at the normals, it loses to none of them except for a few edge cases, right? Right. So if you have range, if you start at range 1, your Hollow Space is gonna dodge all the fast ones, but most of the time you can escape the sweep, right? Like if you're in the middle, after you can retreat 3 and get out.
Advance or retreat. I mean, advance or retreat 3 is actually kind of crazy all on its own.
It's really strong because typically you want to Umina typically exceed at range game in most matchups because of Dark Thoughts.
Sure.
So you want to be as far away as possible. And if you're at range 4, then like, okay, well, do you have more dives? So you keep contesting their dive economy a lot of the time. And so being able to not only just say, hey, I'm not getting hit, and then reposition immediately for next hit as a defensive tool
Right.
is really devastating for your opponent. For a single card, I nullify your attack completely and reposition. And immediately it's my turn. So it's really obnoxious, especially for characters like Zangief, who are range 1 specialists,
Sure.
to fight against it. Obviously, they can still have tools. But typically in a character's normal kit, the best thing they can do to deal with it is if they're cornering the Umina and they play
sure.
sweep here.
Make it so that
Yeah.
you would have to advance out of the corner, and the advance can't get you far enough to dodge sweep's range band. Okay.
Yeah, notably this is like speed 4, so you go before sweep. So like here you get hit and you have to move 3, and here you get hit. And
Right.
because you're not at range 1, you don't dodge the sweep anymore.
You don't dodge the sweep anymore, yeah.
Yeah, this is another reason.
It is kind of like some pretty unique board states that lose to hollow space. So my opponent has to kind of be cognizant of specifically when this card is no longer an option for me to dodge things.
Yeah, okay. 100%. This is another reason why, for all the reasons we mentioned above, if you're fighting against Umina, turn 1 dive, even though it's super telegraph, is probably your best case because A, you get out of range for the Dark Thoughts and you go in. But also B, now you're cornering Umina to stop her from to threaten a sweep that's not perfectly safe for hollow space to be spammed.
And honestly, even on defense, that seems like a fairly reliable play because like hollow space is such a great defensive card. It seems like you as the Umina player are actually giving up a lot of the value if you initiate with it.
Yeah. So I would not want to initiate with that if I can help it.
Even ignoring the idea that I as Ryu over here, if my Umina opponent puts down a card at range 4, I'm like, that's Dark Thoughts. I'm not even thinking about hollow space. I'm going to dodge the Dark Thoughts. I'm going to play the dive anyway. Hollow space is also not a card that I really expect Umina to initiate with. Okay.
There are cheeky times where it's worth doing. Probably only because A, you're expecting them to cross out to dodge the Dark Thoughts, so it hits at range 6, and
okay. It covers a space that the Dark Thoughts doesn't cover.
Sometimes people do that. Like sometimes Umina strikes turn 1, they didn't draw their die. They'd be like, okay, I just wanna cross out. I don't want to get away. Dark Thoughts.
You get clocked by this.
Yeah, and they accept it. It's like, okay, Dark. At least they spend a hollow space, right? Sometimes that's fine. But also, like, sometimes the Umina wants to corner your opponent, and that's like a trade that you're both willing to take if you made that move. And it's like, okay, like the gambit is accepted,
right?
If we're talking about in chess terms.
In chess, sure, I get you.
Yeah. But yeah, so like the only reason Umina really play this would be in a situation where your opponent has boosted a lot. They have a quick repositioning tool in your kit, right? Like, let's say, pretend this is not Ryu for a second, all right? Pretend this is like any other character with like +5 power, +5 speed, and you're like, okay, I have no way of contesting it, so I'm just gonna stick to range 1 and hollow space whatever he attacks me next, and not die from it.
Sure.
And that's when hollow space becomes extremely strong as a defensive tool. That's why you don't want to strike with it for those kind of situations. But like, let's say my opponent does have a repositioning tool. For example, like Ryu's quick step to like move 1 strike. Then I'd be like, okay, I kind of have to diffuse these boosts now. I'll slam the hollow space just to move away, but also guarantee that I don't take that hit, right? So there's a timing components to it that you have to think about, because always think about what your opponent can possibly do and the chain of sequence they could set up.
Right. So I mean, another I guess way to put what you're saying is like, you are much more likely to have to slam hollow space proactively against a Guilty Gear character. Like anybody who
with cancels. There's so many things. So
and if people are watching this are more used to a sort of more modern design sensibility of Exceed from like season 5 onward, there was a time when moving and striking in the same turn was maybe not like unheard of, but was way, way rarer than it is now.
Oh yeah.
Like the fact that Calavontis can call out Ryu as having a specific boost that does that thing, two actually specific boosts that do that thing. That's like a rarity in Exceed from the time. Actually, I don't think that there's many characters in season 2 at all who can do that. So
yeah,
you're sort of expecting in older matchups of Exceed, this is a tool that you sit on much more comfortably. And in a cross-season matchup where your opponent is flying all over the world because they're an anime character, you're probably expecting to use it a little bit more proactively.
Yeah. Okay. And one of that way is its boost. It's actually a very strong boost. It's parry. It's basically parry, but if they do discard a card, it goes to your Dreamland. I think that's the last way she has a way to see. Yeah, that's the third way she has a way to steal your opponent's cards.
Steal an opponent's cards. That's like almost half of her deck has some way to steal an opponent's card on it. Okay, so that's a big part of her theme.
But this is reliable because A, you don't have to hit them. B, you don't have to have them set as an attack and have 3 gauge to pay for this ultra, which is a whole whole world of its own.
Sure.
But you just boost it. If they have it in hand, they give you the card. And this changes the way people play a lot of matchup because while Hollow Space is a really good attack, if you don't find it particularly useful in your matchup because your opponent can void its range 1 auto dodge in various ways, then yes, boosting Dark Reflection to steal important copies of their toolkit becomes really, really powerful.
Right. And obviously, this also... Oh, actually, that's interesting. I was about to say that Dark Reflections obviously becomes much more powerful if you have Spiraling Descent in play, because having something of your opponents in your Dreamlands is better if your Dreamlands are scarier and can invalidate cards. But also, like, if you've already hit Dark Thoughts, you're probably like doing well enough in the overall progression of the game that maybe you can afford to give up the defensive utility of Hollow Space.
Yeah, no, that's a good.
So you're able to kind of like syllogism your way through this. Like, if Dark Thoughts has already been hit, maybe I can afford to boost Dark Reflections. If not, maybe I need to keep it to stay alive long enough and reposition enough to hit Dark Thoughts. Like that kind of thought process.
Yeah.
But at minimum, this is a copy of Parry. And Parry's a good reactive tool anyway.
Yeah, it's a good boost. Its only downside, and notably, is that if you do actually parry something, you have to take it into your Dreamland. And because on front side at least,
you can only have one thing in your Dreamland because it discards anything before a new one is placed. Okay, so if you have a focus.
Yeah, like if you already have something good in there that you're planning to use, but all of a sudden be like, oh, I do need to actually parry that with dark reflections. Well, you better hope you don't need to focus that badly because you're gonna now have a different card.
Right, or you dig for the copy of parry that doesn't give you the additional upside because the upside has become a downside.
That upside, if it's a May, okay, then it's like a strict upside, but it is mandatory to put it in there. So there's some backfiring that could go on.
And I noticed that these are not. This one is mandatory.
Yes, this one is.
It'd be also weird, you're playing it specifically to put the card in your Dreamlands, but at the very least, Dark Thoughts is a May effect.
Yes.
Okay.
Dark Thoughts is a May. Partially why it's so good, in my opinion. But no, actually, it's just a really good card. Ignore that last part. It's just a good card, but it's just extra nice. Like, well, you don't backfire on your own plan.
Okay.
But so going back to Hollow Space. Yeah, Dark Reflection is a very good baseline, even if we just ignore the card completely. But the card itself is very useful. But I also want to go over some real quick of like why this is important, because this is like her only real projectile. Like Dark Thought is a projectile and it's good. Don't get me wrong, but Dark Thought's are already so good that I don't want to talk about it that much more. Right. But in a range, but in an actual like matchup versus zoners and rangers. Hollow Space is your really only tool, and it's a mid speed. But hey, you got a stun immune option, right?
Right.
So if you put the Hollow Space in your Dreamlands, you can always chase your ranger opponent across the map.
Because you mentioned earlier that like most of the time, Umina is very content to sit at range, but there are some characters like maybe not New 13, maybe not Sagat, the characters who are dedicated zoners who can sustain that as part of their game plan can probably fight Umina at that range even with the threat of Dark Thoughts. You need to move in, and the after reposition on Hollow Space, it has the same upside as Assault, where reposition plus stun immunity is really, really helpful, especially on defense, to get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I played a game in one of tournaments versus New. I believe it was I believe Petersonian was on. I don't remember who was playing it, but
Petersonian
in that
is
matchup,
definitely a new player, so the instinct might
it
be
might
right
have
there.
been him. But yeah, so like a key part of that matchup was like I need Hollow Space in Dreamland. I need to be able to follow her around. I want to get into close range to her. And we'll get into very second, but like you can have more copies of a card if you put them East Dreamland Synergy, which we'll talk shortly. But yes, so this is another highlights, another way this character kind of customize her kit. Hollow Space, 99% of the time, you want to use as a defensive tool at range 1 and sometimes as a parry. But in those matchups where it's important, you put into her Dreamland as a primary attack and primary threat on during an actual strike.
Okay.
Right? That's just kind of like the adaptiveness that you have to kind of follow through.
That makes sense. So honestly, kind of a similar thought process behind what we were talking about with Unknown Kadath, where like one side of the card is sort of has to make a case to use it, but it's more like Hollow Space's requirements to use it are so much lower because it doesn't cost 3 gauge.
Yeah,
you're more willing to press this button than you are with Unknown Kadath.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's crazy how strong stun immunity is. I think when I first saw stun immunity, I didn't think too much of it, but then I realized the implication in certain matchups, and it's like, okay, this is way more important than I thought.
Stun immune after Advance or Retreat 3 is pretty crazy, even if you don't hit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So let's cover Shadow Chorus next. Shadow Chorus has the worst stat line in Exceed, 1-1-1. I don't think there's any stat line worse than that. Yeah, it's remarkable. But obviously, it's for a reason, right? So when you reveal this attack, it becomes a copy of the card in your Dreamland. But this card cannot put into Dreamland itself because, it will cause infinite loop potentially.
Now, Judge, my opponent has demonstrated a loop. You wind up with a drawn game or something. Okay.
Yeah.
So in practice, this is not a before effect. This is not an Unknown Kadath. This is as you play the card. As long as you have something in your Dreamlands, it's whatever's in your Dreamlands. Oh, is this what you mentioned with
extra copies? Yes.
Like you gotta have having extra copies or something. Okay.
Yeah. So whatever you put in Dreamlands, since you have 2 copies of Shadow Chorus, you can now have 4 copies of that per shuffle, up to. Okay. So Shadow Chorus is an important card. But because it lets you have extra copies of the thing that you think works the best in your current matchup. Notably, Shadow Chorus has really it's one of the so like for players that's more like, again, like you mentioned earlier, familiar with recent design of Exceed. I believe this might be one of the only cards, if not the only, that has a timing on reveal.
Yeah, there's because very few of those.
Yeah, I can't think. I think there might be a couple others, but I can't think of the top of my head. But it's when you reveal the attack. So that means when you set your attacks down, your opponent sets your countdown, and then you reveal during validation. This is when this like thing happens. The exact ruling and layering of this, I'm not sure about, but in general, like when you pull this face up, if you have a copy in your Dreamland of a card, this is just pretend this is a copy of that card, right? And if it's an Ultra, you still follow through the same rules of validation. You cannot cheat your gauge costs with Shadow Chorus.
And to the best of my recollection, many of we mentioned earlier that Umina is a little bit of a rules nightmare.
Yeah.
Shadow Chorus has like its own section in the FAQ. Like I'm pretty sure that there's quite a few. The one that I'm thinking of is I think it has to do with her Exceed mode.
Oh yeah. But it's annoying as hell.
I'm pretty sure that in many matchups, a new Umina player may want to have the FAQ open for this card in particular, if I remember correctly.
In general, yes.
The specifics of how that works seem like they can lead to some oddities about the exact card that you're copying.
Yeah. In general, in all cases, just pretend it's Shadow Chorus, but as soon as you flip it over in a strike, it's whatever's in your Dreamland. Just think about it like that. That also means that if you try to EX this, you cannot, let's say I have a focus in my Dreamland, I cannot EX the focus attack with the Shadow Chorus and then my other copy of focus.
Right.
It has to be 2 copies of Shadow Chorus.
Right, because when I took it out of my hand to pair it with the other copy of focus, it was not yet a focus. I've committed an illegal game action that's an invalid EX.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of the rule FAQ problem with Umina is like rules enforcement, because hitting information and whatnot.
Sure, yeah. This is the spoiler warning. The one of the few things I actually do know about Umina is that she has some way to have cards in her Dreamlands face down, and
yes,
the way that interacts with many things is causes some rules confusion.
Yeah. And maybe it's just coping at this point. I like that part of her. I like how counter synergistic some of her parts of her kit goes, and how like like counterproductive certain transformation abilities are with each other.
Yeah, it is an interesting like it's the kind of thing that would probably get like errated out in a more recent game of Exceed.
Yeah, if she got released today, definitely
it wouldn't be there. But there's like it's kind of like charming that.
Yeah,
some of those old-time rules variants are there at all. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of what this is, the definition of a counterplay card, because it could be anything. It's whatever I want. It should be whatever my opponent can't deal with. Right.
Yes.
Like I'm assuming that it's going to become a card that if I'm playing Shadow Chorus, it's because I have something good in my Dreamlands. That's the only time I would ever play it.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you just want extra copies of Focus or Sweep because they're just good normals.
Sure.
Maybe Cross, but
also the thing that you were saying earlier about how like Dark Reflections is sometimes a problem because it'll replace the good card you have in your Dreamlands. Mm-hmm. The thing that's in your Dreamlands goes away when you strike with it. Shadow Chorus is a way to get the benefits of that stun immune assault that you were talking about before, without actually spending the stun immune assault.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
It's an extra copy of that card, so you don't have to waste that copy from your Dreamland. And if you steal your opponent's, let's say, a really good special or ultra, you could potentially play multiple copies of that with Shadow Chorus.
Or if you have Dark Thoughts in play and you're sitting on their focus, but you really want a focus, Shadow Chorus can give you all of the benefits of this focus without letting your opponent's card out of jail.
Yeah, and going back to Sagat for a second, it's a really funny interaction because you have low Tiger Shot and you play Shadow Chorus. This becomes low Tiger Shot.
Right.
And you get that after trigger too. So if you hit, you can put your Shadow Chorus back on top of your deck.
Okay.
And you can start low Tiger Shotting
and actually loop LPS. Okay.
Yeah, and imagine you have this, so your opponent can't low Tiger Shot. Now you become the ultimate Sagat. Sagat is getting out Sagatted. That's like the kind of the dream scenario you want on this character.
That's actually very funny.
Yeah. So interactions is like that is what you try and look for.
Okay.
Another, if we're going to Fantasyland, for example, I just want to, show off those like hypothetic Magic Christmas Land here.
Yeah.
Where
absolutely.
Things. If you have something like Plague Knight with, I shuffled that. Sorry, let me search for that real quick. This character lets you get very creative. Once you can play extra copies of cards without burning them through the Dreamland. If you have this in your Dreamland, right, and you have for some reason this boosted and your opponent's not teching it, now if you land this attack, will proc 3 times. So this is a 20 attack. This is 20 power stun immune triple dose. That draws you 3 cards as an after. Like, hey, if you get that going against Plague Knight, like that's 20 damage. 20 damage is 20 damage, right? Like,
and it's like at this point you're sort of assuming that your opponent is cooperating with you in order to get this stuff, but it's not.
Hey, maybe not because
completely unheard of. You could have parried it.
You could steal this. You could have stolen this from your cards, and maybe they're out of dives. You play this, and your opponent have no answer, and then they didn't see you have 3 gauge, and you Shadow Chorus. And that could happen. That can happen.
The sort of tipping point of the combo is a boost that you were probably going to play anyway. It's not so, and hey, you have the 3 gauge, you're not going to spend it on the Unknown Kadath, maybe you'll spend it on their triple dose instead.
Yeah.
So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility, but
it's not.
It is like a little bit of a trick shot.
It is a trick shot, but if it happens, you can't just
win the game.
you just 20 damage, you probably win the game.
You win the game in a pretty funny way.
Yes.
Okay.
Magic Christmas Land.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
this shows you like a hard part of the things. A lot of cool special and ultras. If you want to play them, you have to play them, and then your Dreamland's off, and then half your stuff gets shut down. But if you have this and you have a boost or two that synergizes with this, you can make something very special happen.
Sure.
But Shadow Course is mostly that, like as mentioned before, Exceed in a game of counterplays, having extra copies of something makes a fundamental difference.
Right.
And this is something I would refer to as macro parity. Breaking macro parity. Macro refers to the idea of like your overall, right, like your overall strategy and progression in the game.
Sure.
And a fundamental building block of Exceed is that you get 2 copies of everything. On most characters, you only have 2 copies,
right.
and you have ways to either recur those options, bring those options back, like through like such as cards like low target shot or fireballs, or if your characters that are specializing in recursion like Bane or Nine. That fundamentally breaks a part of the engine where if your opponent cannot deal with a specific option or two, and you can keep using that option, you break the macro parity, and you have a fundamental advantage that your opponent must address, or you probably just win the game.
Right.
And this placing part of that, it's not as strong as a recursion, but it is extra copy of anything, and that breaks parity. It is, and notably, its boost is you draw a card and you perform the instant boost effect of the card in your Dreamland, ignoring the force cost. So if you have focus, now you have potentially extra copies of reading.
Here's a third reading, sure. So every like this card on both sides is a way to double dip. Whatever you had before, you will get more of. And I mean, sometimes, I think so far we've found ways to put our opponent's cards into our Dreamlands, and then our ability uses the card, puts the card in Dreamland, but by doing that, we aren't attacking with it. So in some ways, Shadow Chorus is like, at minimum, I'm assuming somewhere in the kit we have other ways to put cards in our Dreamlands, but at minimum, it's a way to maintain that parity. Because if I used my ability to put a sweep into my gauge, I didn't hit with that sweep. Well, now I can hit with the sweep later. If I used Dark Thoughts to steal my opponent's sweep, I'm already up on cards relative to them. Here's a way to extend that advantage even further.
Yeah.
Okay. And if there is somewhere in the kit to put a copy of a card that I've already hit into my Dreamlands, or a card that I've boosted into my Dreamlands, that's like an even greater way to extend that macro parity advantage.
Yes. Okay. And spoiler, we might see that soon.
Right.
Another notable thing with this card is that because of the way her frontside Dreamland works, if you play this and you have a card in your Dreamland, that's also stunning me, right? Because there's a copy of that card in your Dreamland, and that gives you extra copies of stunning moon, whatever that you wanted to play. So it's stronger than it looks. Its only downside is that if you don't have a card in your Dreamland, it's a dead card.
It's the worst card of all time.
It's literally the only thing it does is that it baits a block at range 1. That's literally the only thing it can do. But yes, otherwise it's a really it's a card that you typically don't want.
Right. Sure.
To be played in a vacuum. So that's Shadow Course. It's overall, you can think of it as pretty self-explanatory. You just get extra copies of whatever's in your Dreamland, and lets you be more flexible. So let's go.
I noticed at this point that we've talked about one card with a transform on it, and it was the first card we mentioned, and then. I don't think you made this explicit, but often the way that this goes is like we're talking about the most important, most impactful things first. And after we talked about the one transform card, we mentioned all of the other cards that don't have transforms. And now we're finally getting back to the ones that do. Should I read between the lines here and say that this transform is like way more important than these other three, and there's a reason we're talking about these ones much later?
Yeah,
Okay.
I say absolutely. I say this is by far her most important transform. You don't have to get it, but you can always use it in every matchup. In
Okay.
every matchup, if you can get it, do get it, but you don't have to win the game,
Okay.
because your opponent's also actively counterplaying it. Her remaining transforms are powerful, but they're not as crucial because mostly due to their shape of the attack is not as reliable. But
Okay.
they're still worth talking about in terms of how they can fit into her overall strategy.
You also mentioned that
Um,
Umina's gauge generation is so bad in part because she just doesn't have a lot of it, but also in part because she's got a transform that you are always going to put in your gauge. Or sorry, that you are never going to put in your gauge. For these remaining ones, are there times when you would make the decision to gauge the card instead of transform it?
uh, yeah, I say it's I think in terms of these guys,
It might happen.
you would always like make that decision. You have to, it's an active thing that you have to think about, and it's not auto. Yes, just transform it. There,
Okay.
right? All transformations like yes, hit it, transform it, be done with it. But these I would think
You'll
harder
think
about.
about it. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's go over them. Let's go over Terror Whispers because we talked about recursion a bit earlier.
Yep.
And this will also kind of explain why Gauge is so important to her. This is a 127. This is like
It's like a really
a
bad
weaker
grasp.
grasp. Yeah, it's like a weaker grasp. But on hit, it puts a card from your Dreamland. Sorry, this card into your Dreamland. So this is how you can quote unquote recur.
Yeah, it's the macro parity thing again. It's
Yeah.
this is the exact thing that we were looking for, a way to use a card that we already got value out of rather than a card that we deferred for later into our Dreamlands.
Yeah, it's mandatory. So be wary of that. If you have a card that you really like in your Dreamland, you have to replace it, and you
Right.
don't have a choice on that.
Right. Okay.
But it's overall nice, but it's not like the greatest card because it's 127. It's a weak hit.
It's only
But the
two
transformation,
damage. You have a
yeah,
normal that does the job quite well.
yeah, a normal that does more damage than it, and also repositions.
Right.
And sometimes the recursion is backfiring. So yeah, so it's like not the best shape, but could be useful in certain positions. I shouldn't
Sure.
say matchup because game positions. But the transform is interesting. As an action, you may spend 2 gauge. If you do, strike, and the opponent must defend with a wild swing.
So okay, so 2 gauge scramble.
Yes, 2 gauge scramble.
Huh.
And you can see why I say gauge is so, because you have this is like a way that consistently burns through your gauge really fast if you do get it online, and you probably want to use it if you transform it.
Right.
But transforming it, that's one less gauge because you transform the card instead of doing it
Right.
elsewhere.
So by transforming it, you're also you're kind of making it more expensive, because if you hadn't transformed it, you'd have more gauge to spend on it.
Yeah, but it is a very powerful. Let's say it's a powerful effect.
Yeah.
Scramble for 2 gauge. The only downside is yes, well, you can't really supply it, and you have to be very deliberate with when you use it. But if you can use it, it's really strong. If there are, I saying about 15 to 20% of the games with Umina, it came down to this card being taking me through the finish line.
Right.
Because it's like a finisher. Scramble, if people played Season 7 would know how strong that card is.
Yeah, I feel like
yeah.
Scramble there are as many people talking about how bad it feels when they play the Scramble and their opponent wild swings a great card anyway, as there are people talking about how powerful Scramble is as a checkmate engine. So I feel like because you do have to keep in mind that your opponent could wild swing the card that you don't want them to wild swing. That's like a thing that can happen.
Yes, so let's talk that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask you if you had any sort of like heuristics on how to get the most out of a card that introduces randomness into your opponent's plans, but might not actually deny them.
I think about it in 2 ways. I think the most useful times I have used this ability has been backing Odor XC, where boost worse and set play was I guess more common. I wouldn't say they're uncommon these days, but they were a lot more common with like especially the season 3 and season 1, season 2 stuff. Right? So like just
I see. So your opponent has committed enough resources to the board that it's become obvious that they are trying to hit you with something very specific.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, okay, I don't care what it is, but it's not going to be that thing. So Wild Swing with your +4 speed and +3 power or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the ultimate. It's kind of like a cheat to get out of jail card, and you let the roll of the die decide what happens to you, right? But it's a pretty good. It's probably going to be very in your favor if you do use it. Exactly. It's like when you know the next strike is absolutely unbeatable. You cannot beat your opponent, and you don't want to trade it with some stun immune anything. You just don't want to take 10 damage from it. Throwing out a scramble on demand is really good. But also keep in mind you have scramble, but you also have your basic reading, right? So if you can't read them, you can also scramble them, right? Like they gotta have a bad card somewhere.
Right,
so,
it's either in their hand and they're threatening it, or it's in their deck and they're threatening it. And either way, you have ways to interact with that. But also, I mean, like, and there are times when you've set up a checkmate against everything but an EX attack. They can't Wild Swing an EX attack. Like there's ways to do that. But it also occurs to me that if I have the Silver Key transformed and my opponent knows that I have a scramble on deck, people hate scramble Calavontis, and I feel like they would be much less likely to overcommit to a boost war in the first place if they knew that my if they knew that my answer would be to make them Wild Swing off of it.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you want to discourage that kind of boost war. Yeah, I mean, great. Like I have a transformation that fundamentally changes like 10% of how you can play the game. I take it, right? Like those are the kind of it denies your opponent a certain play pattern they normally could afford, which is again fitting to this the theme of this character.
Right.
If scramble is that devastating against you, you need to play against it. I already won if I transform. Like I already won that part of the game if I have this transform, just as a threat.
Right.
Again, I do have to commit gauge. I have to keep 2 gauge in my gauge all the time, so it's still expensive on my end, but it's a very nice utility tools for those edge cases. But also keep in mind, Umina, she has lots of ways to see your opponent's hand, right? She has extra copies of parry, but she has one other effect. Okay, spoiler alert, but they have another effect in the future that also shows opponents, gives information on opponents' options. It's kind of hard to find a correct order to talk about these cards because a lot of them interloops with each other.
No, I think this is all made sense so far, so I think we're on the right track. But you have, if at any point you realize that all of the scary cards are in your opponent's hand, scramble suddenly becomes very powerful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing is that this acts as a. It's gonna seem so silly, but it is a deck out threat. Because forcing your opponent to Wild Swing, like it is one card,
right?
But sometimes that's like chaining. Oh, I revealed an ultra. Oh, I have to invalidate that, and then you go to another card.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, maybe that card's invalidated because of extra copies of Dark Thoughts.
I've seen games played where the kill condition was that your opponent's last card in deck was a focus, and it forced you to draw a card. Like, it can happen.
It's a real threat. And it's not just because of this card alone, but because the entirety of her kit, right? If you're constantly denying your opponent from hitting you hard with stuff like hollow space, moving around, canceling out attacks, deck out is a real possibility in a set number of games, right? In 10 games, your opponent might early reshuffle in like half of them because they want to get tempo.
The more annoying you are, the more likely it is that this is going to allow you to win by deck out. It sounds like.
Yeah. It synergizes a lot with this too because this denies up to 2 normals or specials from your opponent. They have 2 less cards. They have 2 less cards.
Causes more opportunities for that Wild Swing to be the card that would be invalidated, so it makes him mill another card. Mill, quote unquote, another card. Okay. That's interesting.
it sounds silly, but it is real, right? Like last tournament, I think it was Defender of the Earth
Mhm.
in one of the final games. My opponent had 2 dives in their deck. I had 1 card left in my deck. They had like 5, but I was able to put a dive in my Dreamland with this, forcing Wild Swing. They burned through half their deck. Now they're on the deck out instead of me.
Was this your game against Donut?
Yeah, it was.
I was on
Granted,
commentary for that game. That I remember
yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah, he made a mistake where he forgot I had Terra Whispers in my Dreamland, struck with the focus assault at range 1. I was spending a long time deliberating. Okay, I'm about to deck out. How can I make the last use of this recursion?
Right.
And I was like, well, he has 2 dive. He has a full deck. He has 2 ultras. He has 2 dive. I put a dive in. I knew I had the deck out pressure at
That's
that
so
point,
funny.
right? This card is relevant for that kind of reason.
Right.
It's nothing to scoff at. It looks like you've been decking out, but all of a sudden you realize half your deck is invalid, and the Umina is changing the invalidation targets on. But like, of course, like this is doing the heavy lifting, right? I say all this is like, yeah, you still need to have this.
You already have the. There's a reason we talked about this one first, but this
Yeah,
is
this is
another
a
way
reason.
to make the transform on Dark Thoughts, as though Dark Thoughts needed the help. Like we did it. We broke Dark Thoughts. We found it.
There's some very unintuitive synergies lying here, and yeah, this is just another way. I doubt they thought of this like deck out thing when they first printed it, but
Right, but
it works.
It has come up.
It has come up consistently enough.
Okay.
With how the rest of her play pattern that it becomes a real threat in certain matchups, especially if your opponent tends to boost a lot or tends to draw a lot.
Sure.
But Terra Whisper, situational, like yeah, there are games where like it just doesn't matter, or you don't have the gauge to do it. Then in that case, yeah, I say yeah, just keep it as a gauge. Like if your opponent's a wild swing character inherently, then like what's the point of like if you're
right, yeah, you're never gonna scramble against Marathi.
Yeah, or Emoji.
Imogen, sure, of course.
Yeah,
okay.
Else, like why bother, right?
Right.
Save your
yeah,
gauge.
just gauge it. I mean, unless I guess if you are planning to exceed, which we haven't talked about yet,
yeah,
the transform, at least the first copy, is going to give you more of a discount on your very cheap exceed cost than a gauge would. But
yeah,
gauge
that's
is
a
more
really
flexible.
good card. That's a good point. Yes. Yeah. I definitely do that. If say you're missing one transformation from exceed and you do want to exceed, yeah, go by all means transform this.
Okay.
But speaking of transformation important for the exceed side, let's talk about the slipping away. And this is gonna we'll go over a bit more why this is so important. But slipping away, the transformation is basically another quick spoiler is that when you're exceed mode, you're consistently getting cards into your Dreamland.
Right.
And this triggers whenever you place a card into your Dreamland. And you may spend a force when that happens to move 1. So this gives you a lot of mobility that you're a pretty mobile character. Like none of your card, you're a pretty immobile character outside of this specific ability.
Right. Outside of hollow space and
yeah, outside hollow space, you have no movement. Yeah, you have no boost. Like if you're cornered, you're kind of just sitting there hoping for like a strike to happen that repositions you a bit. So like cards like this is ability effects that just gives you move 1 at a lot of random timing windows.
Right. It could be at hit timing. It could be during a boost. Yeah. It could be using your UA, action on your turn. Like just little bits of upside here and there to move around.
Exactly. And we will go over more why this is so important when we cover the exceed side. Okay. But let's cover the attack real fast. It's an undercurve attack. I really wish this attack was better because I love this transformation. I really wish it's like range 1 to 3 or something. It hits for only 1 damage, but on hit, you add whatever's in your Dreamland to your gauge, and then you gain power equals to that bonus. So if you have a sweep, you get +5. It's very similar to the effect on this card.
Right. But also, just so I'm sure, doesn't does it synergize with it?
It does, because this is a before and this is on hit.
Effect?
So you could double dip it. You could So you could have 11 power, speed 5, which is kind of scary, but hey, you don't want to miss that attack. So you're probably not playing at speed 5 at range 1 to 2.
Sure.
But if you know they have a sweep, then boom, 11 damage, and hey, it gives you extra gauge too. So, but yes, but if you don't have a card, then This is like another effect that comes up very rarely. Like I think I did this maybe like once or twice in all my experience playing Umina seriously. Is that if you don't have a card in your Dreamland, then you add all your cards from your hand to your gauge. So theoretically possible that you key charge 6 times. It's theoretically possible at the
Right.
cost of dealing a 1 damage at speed 5 at range 1 to 2.
But that is complete. That's also completely anti-synergistic with everything else that you've talked to me about, which is that you
Right.
always want a good card in your Dreamlands, and that enables your whole game plan. And
Yeah,
like,
it's like, do you really want to gauge that Dark Thoughts that you have in
yeah,
your hand to your like it's I think there is a world where you aggressively mill for this option, and just get massive amount of gauge advantage early on. But I honestly, like in theory, it could happen, right? It could happen in games where you really need to turn this online 8 as soon as possible. It could happen in games where you want an early Terror Whispers and you want to exceed right away. It is actually like feasible for me at least to see that happening.
right,
But for consistency, that's not a consistent line of play that I would like
yeah.
actively go for.
If you've told me you're a very like long-term successful Umina player, and you mentioned that this wild swing leading to a deck out uh, comes up in more games than the gauge all your cards effect.
Yeah,
I feel like that's telling.
yeah, yeah.
We talked about the deck out one first.
Yeah. I oh man, maybe I try it next game just see if it happens. Like
See if you can make it happen.
it's
Yeah,
yeah, it's theoretically possible, but
right.
it just doesn't really fit. Like it's a very aggressive, proactive. I like to use the word proactive. You're like really actively trying to engage a specific line of play, which is typically what I don't encourage on playing Umina.
Right.
But
Yeah,
maybe there are certain situations where that's worth it. Like maybe your
yeah,
opponent spent all your cards for some reason very early on, and you see a window of opportunity to just completely flip the script and turn into like turn exceed, become hyper aggressive. That could happen.
right.
Has not happened to me yet.
Right, and
Because
that could be sort of like your playstyle is leading you naturally away from, because you are a fairly defensive player. I think that's going to lead
yeah,
you
yeah,
naturally away from that kind of line. But also, like, the reason that you're a defensive player and you've found a lot of success with Umina is that Umina like synergizes very well with a defensive player's mindset. So
mhm,
why like rock the boat kind of?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
You're on the mark for all of that.
okay,
Yeah, but all out of mind. Yeah, we'll come back to it when we talk about Exceed a bit more, and we'll
okay.
come back to all of these cards when we talk about Exceed side because it changes
It
again. It
changes all
changes
of
her.
them, sure.
Yeah, it changes all of them a bit. Let's just focus on the front side.
Sure.
On the front side right now, I mean, at worst, this card is like an extra move action when you take your unique action, which is not bad, honestly. You know, like some action compression, and that was rare back in the day. So yeah,
Yeah, sure.
I'll take it.
That makes sense. And as
Uh,
an attack, it's a mid speed on a character who I mean, she doesn't have a ton of difficulty hitting really hard with this boost, but it's a potential. It could be a 7 damage. It could be Tager Driver basically, but it also
well,
is gonna.
it can only be +5, so it'd be 6 damage. It
Oh,
doesn't even
six
break
damage.
sweep.
Okay, yeah. So it's kind of
Yeah,
a weird. It's kind of a weird mid speed without
yeah,
boost in play. Yeah, I see what you mean now.
yeah. And because it's 6 speed, notably, sorry, it's not 6 speed, 6 power. It doesn't break sweep.
Right.
There's another reason why
It's a
you
mid speed
corner
that doesn't beat
Umina.
anything.
Yeah, and it's like if you play sweep, you trade at worst with any of her. Like she doesn't have ways to get out of
I
it.
get you.
She
Okay.
she has to dive if she wants to dodge it. So this is like another kind of like redundancy in her weakness.
Right.
Which is I don't know. So it's like extra of the same weakness. That's why it makes like this position, so much worse for Umina.
Right, and
Just off hollow
other than hollow
space.
space, yeah,
Yeah,
that's why you're leaning on
yeah.
that so hard
It's
there.
on top.
And also, like because you are less likely to play this as an attack, you are also probably less likely to be you like short of EX transforming it. It's rare enough that you're going to be going for out of mind as an attack that you might not be getting slipping away as a transform anyway.
Yeah. I say slipping away, as I mentioned, is very important for Exceed side, in my opinion.
Right.
If you do plan on exceeding, you would actively try to like get that EX
Right.
transform or like EX attack with like some speed boost to guarantee it. Um, another like and vice versa is also true. If you do somehow land it or get it to EX transform, you can now consider your Exceed as a potential like line.
I see. It will, because it sounds like by default we're planning to not Exceed. But if we happen to EX transform Out of Mind or Wild Swing into Out of Mind or something and get this transform, maybe now it's starting to feel a little bit more appealing.
Yes,
Okay.
and yeah, exactly, and you like exceeding. I think I exceed. I don't really want to give a number, but it's really depending on the matchup and depending on the deck timing, deck pressure,
just the state of the game,
life total. It's so many things compound into calculating whether or not you should exceed.
Okay.
Okay, let's go over her last ultra, and this is not because it's in order of importance. This is actually a very important card. But I kind of want to save like a nice little like okay, well we went to 2 cards that doesn't sound so appealing to hit.
Right.
This card is really appealing to hit. All right, this card is like
here's our dessert after we suffered through.
Yeah, this is like a dessert. Yeah.
Okay.
We started off reasonably strong with our bread and butter. We kind of went to the salad phase, and now we finished
reasonably strong.
Yeah.
Dark Thoughts,
Call the Dreamland.
Reasonably strong. Calavontis 2026.
Yeah, reasonably strong. Bread and butter. 2 gauge ultra. Her only above curve out option once you're at range 4 and above. 2 to 5, same range spread as
Dark Thoughts.
Dark Thoughts, which makes her range 5 the most match up her ideal range.
Sure.
Only hits for 2, speed 5. Okay, on hit, both players revealed your hands, and for all specials and ultras in the reveal hands, you get +1 power on it.
Okay. That's uncapped too. That is a potential for uncapped. A whole lot of power.
Yep. So if we're just counting your own, let's say you have 7 cards, 6 of them is like 5 or 6 of them. This is just hitting for 7 damage, at minimum.
Right.
But plus whatever's in your opponent's.
And then you add your opponents on top of it.
Yeah.
That's too much for a 2 gauge ultra.
Sometimes
that's what's happening.
Yeah, I remember playing against Fakey's Turn Lose in person back in the day, and Turn Lose likes to keep all the special in hand, so this was hitting for like 14 damage. It was really fun that strike, but just for 2 gauge also, and pretty fast. Okay, so notably, it caused both players to reveal their hand. Okay, so that means if you have reading, this like both player can read each other without any problems with perfect accuracy. Also means that if you are dominating, like there's some interactions with this where talk about in terms of macro, because Umina has extra copies of reading and a lot of hand information. Most player will pitch away their normals, right?
Right.
That leaves
and now they have all their specials and ultras.
Yeah, and all what's remaining is mostly like specials and ultras. So that's inherently, while this is not directly obvious, it is inherently synergistic with her kit.
Sure.
She also have, and because it reveals their hand, now you can read them. If they don't pitch away their knobs, because of the way she can deny certain options and force them to like push out certain cards, you can also encourage more specials and ultras. To be in your opponent's hands, and because she's hard to hit and hard to pin down, and there's requires a lot of back and forth neutrals to set up, both players are likely to have a lot of cards in hand. Now, I have played against players who are well aware of this threat, so they actively play like very low card count. Like they will try to, like, once they see 2 gauges online, they will spend a lot of your resources, keep play at around 2 or 3 cards in hand, and
just play really aggressively. Yeah,
high pressure, but like deliberate high pressure, but like not overcommitting anything.
Right.
Which I think is like really smart to do.
But that is potentially exploitable as well, because they're limiting the number of resources that they have access to by spending aggressively. Yeah. So it's very hard. It takes a very good player to go with that line of play without opening up exploitable holes in their own play patterns.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Not all characters can do that kind of play style either. So they're like aggressive characters. You have to recognize the game, like playing against Umina. When is it right to play against Call the Dreamlands?
Right.
Sometimes you actually have a 6-speed options at range 4 to 5, and you just don't care, and you'd be like, all right, play your Call the Dreamlands. Like,
what's up, Bang?
Yeah, exactly. Bang is you're never landing that thing against Bang. But then if they, or like someone like who's like a very fast 6-speed, like Straight Fire on Renea, but Renea is a whole other monster. Like,
right, we're not sure, yeah,
like sure, Renea Straight Fire, yeah, like she needed more of that. But then like okay, maybe you mix it up with the Dark Thought that you still have maybe a copy or two of.
Right.
So like there's some like mind games there, but yeah, as soon as you get 2 gauge, this becomes a real threat. And this is another reason I emphasize gauge economy. If you have this online, your opponent's tune completely changes. I think as long as they recognize this is a threat. But until then, it's a fucking it's just excuse my language. Sorry,
Oh, don't worry
it's
about it.
kind of
It's
like
fine.
a dead card, right?
Sure.
Because let's look at transform cards. Enter your Dreamland face down. Reveal them when they are referenced by a card effect. Very interesting, very cool, very thematic. It gives you hidden information, right? On front sides, let's say I put it like you don't know what I'm putting in here. Like it could be a stun immune, sweep, assault. You don't know what it is.
Right.
Until you reveal. So that gives some nice parity, but it also shuts off a lot of things, and we'll discuss that just about now. I don't like to transform this card because you're already gauge hungry, and this is a good attack. This is kind of your payoff attack that's reliably fast.
Right.
So you kind of want to have as many copies of this as you can.
Oh, sure.
That's why.
So after the reshuffle, your transformed cards won't go back into your deck. So you want it's actually it's Eternal S thing. You want to make sure that the good cards that you haven't already transformed, so you can use them again.
Yeah. Call of Dreamland definitely falls under the category. It's actually a more powerful effect, I would say, than most of these transforms. But because it's on an ultra, it's 2 force, and it's also a good attack.
Right.
I say 95% of the time I would not transform this.
Okay.
And I hate that this is.
And well,
I hate that this is like one of these things that's like really clear cut to me. I think this is like one of the more clear cut cases. Like, yes, you should
just probably don't transform it. And to your point about it being kind of a dead card, if you haven't set up the circumstances where Call of Dreamlands can be very threatening, what else are you going to do with it? Because you can't boost it. There's no other option but to transform it. So without like ultras with transforms on them in general often end up being dead cards in your hand in my experience. So I feel like playing deliberately so that you don't wind up with nothing to do with Call of the Dreamlands is probably a good idea.
Yeah. Just to go over more reasons not to transform this. It's not a particularly powerful effect. It is interesting, like I said, but it's like in actuality against actual good players. Now I think about it, like they will expect the worst case scenario in your Dreamland. So like if I'm putting something there, they're gonna assume it's something like focus or sweep, and I feel like most of the time it doesn't actually change the outcome of a strike resolution. It doesn't give you enough value, like that information parity. In the guide I wrote about like 5 years ago, talking about this transform, it's on Board Game Arena if anyone's interested.
I'll link it in the description.
Yeah, sure. I don't know how relevant that guide is nowadays. I was looking at it the other day. I was like, I gave this card this like transform more credit, but playing it after this many years, I still feel like it's just never justified.
Right.
I almost always rather have 2 force over anything else. Maybe. Okay, maybe there's a case to make for it. Is that if you really need another transform to exceed and you have both copies, transform it to get the exceed deduction, and this work actually very well with your exceed side. But I much rather have this, obviously.
Right.
But hey, if you have no transform, you want to exceed and you're desperate, slam it and try it. It's worth it than just like hoping for something better to come. Because your kit is not going to give you a better thing.
But also if you have 0 transforms and you want to exceed, like why do you want to exceed? Because the line that we've discussed here so far has been perfectly functional without worrying about the exceed side. So maybe you're leaning too hard into the exceed mode if you are at if you're at 0 transforms and looking for it already.
Yeah. If you're desperate and you need to do something powerful,
right?
Like we'll cover that in a bit about exceed, and which means you need to exceed. Slam this, try exceeding. I think it's worth a shot than just sitting there dying to certain characters. Certain characters like like Renea or sometimes Zolt. I say if you don't get the transfer, Zolt is a very bad matchup for Umina. I say, it's like you need that extra unpredictability, extra like firepower, and extra just like unpredictableness to push you through to maybe winning the game. And in those cases, I say, okay, yes, consider Call of the Dreamlands. Yes, transforming it. But that hasn't happened to me.
Right.
But I'm not saying it's not there. And I strongly suggest this is one of the cases you really have to think about the game and test it yourself. Because I have, even playing Umina for this long, I haven't played all the possibilities. Right? I
No,
haven't
of course
I've
not.
played
Yeah.
I've played most matchups. I haven't played all the positions in those matchups.
It's the disclaimer at the top, right? Like, Exceed's not a
Yeah.
solved game. Please tell us when to play the Sleeper Awakes, because Calavontis has not found it yet.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that should tell you something. He's played a lot of Umina.
Yeah, I theorized it. I have not actually tested in action. I theorized, yes, you could technically get a lot of gauge, and maybe with a lot of gauge, you threaten this early, and with this and transform this, maybe you turn to Exceed like monsters really early on. Maybe there's like a really cool play, or you can just go to safer bread and butter.
Or you just do the thing that you know is strong.
Do the thing that you know is gonna for sure work if you get it all. So like it's
it's a tough
so
call.
I'll cover those. Yeah, I'll cover those, and maybe that's my fault as a player that I should limit test. Exceed Umina with these two transforms, and I know that for those who like never play Umina, it's like, oh, what is this Exceed Umina he keeps talking about? That's
I'm
so mysterious.
I'm dying to know, because I straight up, other than I know that this card flips over too. I do not know what happens, and I'm very curious.
Yeah, but I think we covered Call of Dream. Okay, so let me go over. Okay. Let me just finish covering this card real fast, and then we can jump to the juicy part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another reason why this doesn't transform is because it has a very bad, and I really mean really, really bad, ruling counter synergy with the Dark Thoughts. If you have a card face down in your Dreamland, you do not invalidate your opponent's cards using Dreamland, because it doesn't quote unquote recognize it.
There's no effect on this card that would cause it to be flipped face up, so this is a blank card until something strikes with
like it would be happy like a very magical moment where let's say I have a sweep in here face down. I play a sweep. You respond with a sweep. Sweep face up. This gets referenced by Dreamland because it's stun immune. I now have to prove it, and now that's invalid. Like, it has to be. You have to have an extra step of actually revealing this card, which significantly reduced the power of Dark Thoughts, and I really don't like that, because Dark Thoughts transform Spiral Descent is one of the, as we mentioned, one of the most powerful effects in her kit, and this actively counters it.
Right.
So yeah, if you transform one of these, don't transform the other, is what I say.
And there's a reason that we talked about this one first.
Yeah, there's a reason why I prioritize that first.
Okay, sure.
But okay, going back to this card, it's for users. Just to mention, if you look at her kit, she doesn't really have that much like actual economy, right? She doesn't have that many ways of drawing through her deck.
Other than she's got a boost that draws her a card somewhere. This one, and then she's got an attack that you've literally never used in order to draw a couple cards, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. There might be a line where you utilize those to its maximum effect, but in general, you're not going to be drawing a lot. So spending this as 2/4 when it's a dead card to CC and whatnot it's very worth doing. And it's like, when I first played her, it is such a cool card to land, and I want to threaten it, and I hold on to it, even though like half the game it's absolutely worthless because I didn't have to gauge, or I wasn't in a position to threaten this. You
had this in a handful of normals.
Yeah, just CC it, just change cards. You need notably these 3 cards, right? I want to put them out, and even those cards on top that are good. These cards, a lot of times, you're not gonna strike with them. If you want to play a perfectly safe line,
sure.
You should probably strike with this if you can, but it's very matchup dependent. You're gonna have a lot of cards that just sitting in your hand that you can't really execute, or just bad EV. Like, the expected value of striking with this is very low.
Right.
So you have to change cards when you feel like you're under the pressure to do so.
And you would rather not change cards, Dark Thoughts or Shadow Chorus or Hollow Space or Unknown Kadath. So you're
these cards are so important that you're never CCing them. Sure. Maybe Unknown Kadath sometimes, maybe.
Unknown Kadath is like sure.
2/4 is 2/4. But yeah, so like you already have cards that are like dead weights depending on your opponent's actions.
Right.
You don't want to you need card velocity. A lot of times you're not striking with Dark Thoughts either because your opponent's is like playing around it. And a lot of times you're okay with just drawing through your deck till you get Dark Thoughts EX and transform it. And that's like perfectly valid, and that will win you the game in a lot of matchups.
But in order to draw through your deck, you're probably going to be CCing these cards anyway.
Yeah, so don't be afraid to CC. I need to do CC more. But at the same time, it changes on deck pressure. It changes a lot of things, a lot to think about. But yeah, I'm just like a lot of times this is 2/4, and don't be afraid to CC it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, I think that covers the base kit with relation to this. Obviously, all this stuff you can augment with Stun Immune. You can augment out of mind Stun Immune. Now it's pretty good at range 1, but it still loses to Grass because you don't hit back. But it's a little nicer. Okay, but so what can we see about her overall game plan on the front side? It's very control-y. It's very about denying your opponents with precision. You have control over what's in your dreamland a lot of the time. You want to put stuff in your dreamland that makes sense to either deny your opponent or repeat them because it exploits your opponent's weaknesses, or is a deterrent against their strength, right? Such as range 1 with Hollow Space. You might want extra copies just against Zangief.
Right.
Perfectly valid. Varies from games to game. But you're playing a very control-y, and your payoff is typically either just through option denial or through Call of Dreamlands for big hits. Do we have any questions there?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it does illustrate your point very well that like we're not really going to know what we're going to do with Umina until we sit down against our opponent and see what character they're playing, because all of these things are basically many different tools that can go in many different directions, but the application of them is going to depend on who we're fighting and what the matchup is. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. With that said, we can probably move on to the Exceed side. But before that, I need a quick water break.
It's all good.
Okay, all right. Give me like 1 minute, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, please take your time.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thanks. Okay, so all right, the moment you all waiting for.
I've been dying for this the entire episode.
Cool. The Dreamer Awakened. When you Exceed, you flip your Dreamland also to the other side, so you have to care about it.
Yep.
And at the start of each turn, you look at the top card of your deck. You either discard it or you put it into your Dreamlands.
Okay.
So you no longer have this action, right? This is no longer the case. You can no longer, as an action, put whatever you want into Dreamland. Instead, it just comes from the top of your deck every turn. And if you don't want it or don't want to replace what's in your Dreamland, you have to discard it. But let's see. Also, look at the Dreamlands itself. Add any card here to its owner's hand before a new one's placed here. So this is different from the backside, where the backside is you have to discard the one that's currently there. Right. This one actually returns the card here to its owner's, not yours, its owner's hand. So if you have your opponent's cards in here, and you have to put a new one card in here, you have to return that card to your opponent before, which could be a good and a bad thing.
So you can read them.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of
Okay.
times it just comes down to that. And when you set attack, you may seal a card in this area to add all its before, after, and hit triggers. So kind of like Iaki's on his Exceed
Equus, yeah,
side. Yeah, Equus.
or a little bit of Plague Knight, that like trigger
Yeah,
mixing, that kind of thing.
yeah,
Okay.
trigger mixing. Yep. Um, and this opens up like a whole new playstyle
Yeah,
for
that's
Umina.
very different. Like we're giving up
It's
stun
very
immunity, we're
different.
giving up the ability to put cards in whenever we want. That's
Right.
remarkably different. Like I know that
Yeah.
Seventh Cross in general is pretty well known for having like a very modal Exceed mode where what you were doing before doesn't really resemble what you were doing afterward. But this is like a a totally different character.
Yeah. And I kind of want to go overall like the overall implication of this, right?
Totally.
So before you have like you can make safe, consistent attacks with stun immunity. You have good control of what's in your dreamland because it's not getting replaced every turn. Um, and because of those, like the front side is very resemble of this like more control line, more safe. You're playing for that consistent option denial and eventual eventually win with just good selection of options and like forcing your opponent to play around their weaknesses and your
Right.
strength. Um, once you flip that, you lose the consistency and control over what's in your dreamland. In return, you get to basically draw an extra card every turn, assuming the card in here is belongs to you. Um, that's obviously you don't want to just discard it because like you're basically decking yourself out if you're just going to discard what's on top of your dreamland. So a lot of times, even though it's something you like in your dreamland, you're still going to replace it just so you don't lose out on options in your entire deck.
Right.
The Dreamer Awaken is uh gives you at the cost of consistency more resources and more gas to keep running. Um, at the same time, it's putting pressure on what you have to do before you run out of options. Um, instead of giving you stun immunity and safety, it's giving you that explosiveness and that new a whole new toolkit of potential creativity, mixing up attacks, mixing up your opponent's triggers with yours, just all kind of like really potentially creative things you could do with it. Um, and that makes this a whole new character. And the way I look at it, you're moving from a safe, stable, consistent, set play control character to a more. You still have some control elements to you, to a more high economy, volatile, aggressive playstyle.
Right.
Um, and when you decide to exceed, it's not only a it's not only decided by your preferred playstyle, because a lot of times you should play exceed how you want to play exceed. But if we're playing to win here, you should typically consider exceeding when you need that extra push to finish the game, when you need to seal cards to make very strong attack shapes to beat your opponent, when you need those extra one card per turn, and you're willing to seal cards permanently. So probably your second reshuffle. Second run through of your deck
Yes, your
after you
second deck.
reshuffle.
But also, I mean,
Yeah,
like because your Exceed mode is gated behind taking the Exceed action, you're not going to have access to it at the very beginning of the game anyway. You might not be well. Your Exceed mode's quite cheap at the same time, so you might be uh, it might be possible to exceed too early and still be on your first deck without and
yeah,
run into that ceiling problem.
yeah. Notably, like right on the front side, you want to land those 10 damage sweeps or whatever. Get your opponent low enough before exceeding becomes a real option. I think it's really hard if you don't have some sort of like a good life advantage over your opponent without to justify exceeding, because you do deck yourself. Your opponent knows this too. You lose a lot of your control capabilities
Yeah.
once you enter exceed mode, and your opponent can potentially play around your self deck out. And it's non-trivial. It's a real issue. Um,
I'm also
but,
looking through my cards here. Obviously,
mhm.
like normals as well. There's obviously strong combos that we can make, but I'm thinking about your comparison to Eoquist a second ago, who had several cards in his kit that have a before trigger that's just before +2 power, or something else that makes the Dragon Slayer Exceed side a more obviously compelling, like, here's what you would use with the Dragon Slayer. Like, if I switch to the Dreamer Awakened, what in my deck suddenly becomes the new power card to see in my Dreamlands for this effect? Because the thing that was in my Dreamlands before was all about denying my opponent's options with Dark Thoughts and getting extra copies of Reading with my boost on Shadow Chorus. Like, now I'm looking for it as a way to augment another of my attacks. And, like, other than, like, maybe there's some ways to, like, set up some things in your Dreamlands that you might want, but none of these things seem to be an extremely obvious power bump, except for this thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you have to be a little bit more creative than Yuki's, but if we look at the ultras, we immediately see, okay, these ultras are meant for their triggers, right?
Right.
Well, now they're actually, like, you can put them on anything. You can cheat their, like, you play these ultras mostly for the triggers, and now you can get these triggers without spending the
you reveal your hand twice. And
you could
double
you
the
play a
power.
card Dreamland, you steal the other, you reveal twice and plus super power. But now your grasp is potentially hitting for,
Right.
geez, like 10 damage potentially if you just reveal 7 ultra specials. You can now Anon Kadath, a very like, it's only for the before. So if you grasp Anon Kadath, it you can do it at any range. Now you have a speed 7, cost 0 gauge. You do the exact ability.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
it's not making you, it's not letting you hit as well, but it's letting you be even faster with Unknown Kadath.
Yeah, but also lets you cheat the cost of the gauge, right?
Right.
You don't
sure.
have
You don't have to pay the gauge cost.
That's like a big thing. You could it's like how, like, I think that's probably the easiest way to land on Kalath is you exceed, have Kalath somehow in your Dreamlands, and then play Grasp.
I got you.
Yeah. To emphasize how, like, this only happens if you're actually able to top deck a Kadath into your Dreamland, because once you exceed it, you're really not you really don't have control over your Dreamland. What's into your Dreamland, right? Let's say you start exceed with something in your Dreamland. You exceed. Starting at next turn, you immediately start to have to just make decisions. Okay, am I keeping what's in my Dreamland, or am I ditching it?
Right.
And I say 8 out of 10 times you do want to you want to take the new card. It's really bad to throw away cards, unless you have unless you immediately on that turn can do something like sealing this card to make a very strong strike.
And also, like lest we forget, adding something from here to your hand. I mean, oops. This is pretty strong. Like, being able to build an EX attack on the fly, to just at the beginning of your turn for free, is remarkable. So it's the ability to stack triggers on things is really cool, but also just getting options back as you need them to hit your opponent with is part of the power budget here too.
Yeah. Terra Whispers with the Dreamland lets you actually draw the cards that you need. Especially if, so, like, if you play with Terra Whisper, you put whatever card into Dreamland, and next turn when it comes to start your turn, you get it back to your hand.
You get it back, and now you can throw EX Assault or whatever you need at the moment. Okay.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's really good. So, notably, this also opens you up to reading if you cannot block it, because the now cards are going in and out of your Dreamland every turn. It's not like you can just keep a focus here and deny your opponent focus.
You shouldn't. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, if you have this transformed, you're very encouraged not to exceed. Doesn't mean you can't. You still can. You're just that it's just, like, less effective. This becomes less effective if you do exceed.
Right.
Because of those reasons, it's not like you can deny exceed. You cannot deny certain options as consistent. Meaning, your normals that are here and you're coming into your hand, and if you don't immediately spend them on that turn,
Right.
you become vulnerable to your opponent's reading.
Unless I'm assuming unless you
Yeah,
have Sleeper Awakens, where
yes.
it's
Sleeper
giving you
Awakens.
cover against your opponent's readings because you're going from an unknown area to an unknown area.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Call of the Dreamlands transform the Sleeper Awakes. If you do, it's like if you do have it transform, it's because you want to exceed.
Right.
This is but the alternative to that is slipping away, and I mentioned this earlier. This is really important for her exceed side.
Oh, sure. Because
Because
now it doesn't Renea have an ability like this? Like just when at the start of her turn she just moves one.
she has a card that says when you resolve a boost, you may spend a force.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
And with her briefcase, she can get a free boost every turn, right?
Right.
And take another action, so she can do that.
That's what I'm thinking
So
of. Yeah, and that's incredibly strong. So
yeah,
similar, just like
it's
at beginning of my turn, I just move one for not for free, but
yeah, but no, another notable thing is that if you have a normal that your opponent knows they can read, you can immediately spend the normal you get back to hand as the force to pay for this effect.
sure.
So you get a pseudo counter of information disparity, but also get a movement out of it.
Right.
And this is why I emphasize slipping away as probably the most important boost if you want to exceed. Um, doesn't mean you can't exceed without it, but it's just that like if you can exceed, like it just makes it so much more impactful.
Sure.
Gives you so much more option, gives you so much more mobility, and gives you so much more ways of actually using your card. Otherwise, you're like, oh man, I don't have either of these two transform, and I'm exceeded. I guess I have to spend the spike I just got from my hand, or I'm gonna
Right.
get red.
You're starting to bleed out the options that you're looking to kill your opponent with. And I mean it probably is worth highlighting. Like you mentioned, maybe don't exceed if you have Dark Thoughts transformed.
Yeah.
Maybe do exceed if you have these two transformed. But only of those three cards, which transform are we prioritizing? This one. So
Exactly.
if this is an either or, and we started the lesson talking about this, we have to assume that we are exceeding as a secondary priority. If we can get Dark Thoughts, we're not exceeding. If we can't get Dark Thoughts, we'll think about it, and then it's more likely that we're actually going to engage with that line of play if we get these transforms in play.
Right.
Okay.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Very succinct. But you also so earlier you also asked about like so like why transform at all, right? It's for the cool attack shapes, right? It's for the economy, the cool attack shapes, and to finish your opponent off. So what are cool attack shapes? You asked me. I didn't quite answer that. You could, for example, if you have diving here, you could range one play this, and this will dodge just about everything in the game.
Oh God, yeah, that's really hard to deal with.
Yeah. They could nullify it with a cross, but you're also threatening the dive with the sweep to catch them across the map.
Right.
So it's not perfectly safe for them to play the cross. That's just one example. Another, typically what some people do, they would mix. Oh, I keep mixing these up.
It's all good.
They would mix and match Assault with Call the Dreamlands. Typically Call the Dreamland. One or the other, depending. Yeah, one or the other, really.
Hand
But
reveal plus advantage is pretty strong.
Yeah, right into reading immediately after, because that's
Sure.
one of the biggest issue with this attack on the offense is that you give your opponent, if you strike with this, you open yourself up to reading unless you have no normals.
Right.
Well, now with Assault this, you immediately can read them right afterwards, and also notably, Call of Dreamland as a shape is it's kind of telegraphed, right? Like if your opponent's like playing around your strongest option, they will be like, okay, Call of Dreamland's online. They cross out. This helps you cover the cross in 90% of the cases.
Right.
So this is a potent combo. I mean, Assault in Dreamland when you have this is just strong in general.
Yeah, advantage is a strong effect.
Yes. Hit confirm is also really nice. This is another strong combo. This is much better. If you have this in Dreamland, you play this, you seal this. Now you have two options. if you hit your opponent, which you will probably at range 1 at speed 7 on initiation,
Sure.
you can put like a sweep back to your dreamland, immediately add it to your gauge for 7 power total. You have selection over what you want to do.
Oh, okay. So you order your hit triggers. So if
Yeah.
you have something, you've got like an onboard trick type deal. You have something with a high power value in your discard pile. It goes here from Terror Whispers. It goes to Gauge from Out of Mind. You get a ton of damage on top of it. You have a that's 4 gauge ultra stat or 3 gauge ultra stat lines probably.
Yeah, 177. That's
That's
like
pretty good.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty
177 that
up.
gives you an extra gauge. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, and then like, and if he's like, okay, I already stunned them, I don't need that much damage. Or they played a block, for example. You could instead, like you add a bunch of cards to your gauge. Um, add a bunch of cards to your gauge. Draw 3 more cards. Transform this. Well, now you can. Okay, now you have all the gauge you need for
to
scramble.
Just make him scramble over and over again.
Yeah, it's very potent.
And because you're playing more proactively, you might be able to force the scramble more easily. Okay.
Exactly. Like you're actually trying to finish the game, so this is like worthwhile.
So the thing that I said earlier about like the Dragon Slayer having like more obvious ways of making use of trigger mixing and trigger stacking, really in practice it's more that he has more obvious sources of red number, and Umina has plenty of really interesting powerful attack shapes. It's just that what her powerful attack shapes look like, with the exception of Out of Mind, is less about just overwhelming power and more about like advantage in hand information for reading, or getting card recursion at odd times in order to threaten something next turn. Like still really powerful effects, but not as legible, not as easy for an idiot like me to glance at and be like, I see why you would want to play this. So
more or less you're on the mark on that.
Still powerful enough that we want to consider it as part of our game plan when we don't, at least when we don't have Dark Thoughts transformed. It's not an afterthought or anything like that.
Right.
Okay. How often do you find yourself exceeding?
Okay, so what do I look out for when I exceed is a couple of things. Okay. First of all, I ask, am I doing fine in my current state of things? And it's like, if yes, like I will win eventually, no matter what they do, then why exceed?
Sure.
Like take the safe line, take the consistent line, doesn't have any like randomness to it from top decking. Take the line that doesn't, you're not pressured to make moves with a set amount of time before you deck yourself out. So if I'm doing well, I probably not exceed unless like I have a very good reason to, right?
Right.
I look at like how my opponent's life total is in relative to mine. Can I, with the deck pressure in mind, do I actually have enough cards to finish them off? That's kind of like that might actually be the number one criteria after like that. Those are the two top criteria. Like, am I doing okay right now? And if I do exceed, can I actually end the game without pressuring myself too hard?
So either of those, it's like I have to be not already winning, but I also have to not be losing so much that exceeding is going to kill me before it kills my opponent.
Yeah, I have to have at least some damage in.
Okay.
But there are times where like the matchup is so bad, or like the game state is so bad that you just take the chance and exceed anyways. And like it's and there's multiple factors that that goes into it. Like, do you have Silver Key transformed? Sorry, not the Silver Key. Do you have Slipping Away transformed? Can you transform this?
Right.
If you have these two transformed somehow, I might be like like that pushes the like weight to exceed much more.
Right.
Like let's say this, like a copy of this gets parried. Okay, well I'm not gonna get this transform in a foreseeable future, so I'm not gonna play around this control line anymore. Then I give that up. Okay. So then it's like, okay, I need to exceed for power. Do I know my opponent to have a lot of armor in their kit? Right? How much effective health do they have?
How much?
How fast? Hit them? Yeah, how fast are they gonna run through their deck? If I do exceed, the shapes and the combinations I can make with this this ability, do they actually make a big difference in the actual strike resolutions? Like, if they have attacks that just beats everything, no matter how I can augment my attack, what's the point? How important is the stun immunity aspect of my game? Um, like those are all factors I would have to think about. And honestly, it takes a lot of experience to, I feel like, to really make a decision like that.
Right.
And if you're picking up a Umina just like straight fresh out of the gate, unless you really enjoy the the excitement of the Exceed side, I'd say you're probably gonna do okay if you don't bother exceeding.
Right. And then
But
let your experience with, like, you'll notice when you could have done the exceed mode, and then you'll learn
yeah,
for next time. But it's
yeah.
not a situation like there are some hold on, like, for example, and we already talked about Equus. I know that Lucia has this reputation as well, where, like, there are Equus players and there are Dragon Slayer players. There
Oh
are
yeah, yeah.
Emojin players and there are Hecatonchier players. There are not Renea players, and like if you're playing Renea, you are exceeding as Renea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Umina, it sounds like, is somewhere in the middle, where, like,
I like
nobody.
to play her in the middle. I personally think that there's very good reason to exceed and very good reason not to exceed. And I
Right.
see cases for both.
Right.
I personally see that. I know players that live and die by one side or the other.
Okay.
Because honestly, exceeding I think it was Feathers that likes the exceed side a lot. I'm not sure if and I think Byron really likes the. I don't remember actually. I got the names all mixed up. Do not take my take my word to.
Having talked to Byron before, I can see the control line on front side really appealing to him. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
I actually played against him like a couple months ago, and he did exceeding all those games. So I don't think that's necessarily true. Exceed side is very fun to play and gives you the umph to finish games.
Okay.
So even if you're in a full control mode, maybe exceeding, seeing that your opponent's down, and then you find a timing to exceed and just to finish the game or push it to a critical mass, it's perfectly reasonable. So I say, yeah, I think Umina at the highest level, you should consider when and when not to exceed with her. Although I think, like I think exceed is a little undervalued. I think people don't. It's something hard to deal with. But at the end of the day, at worst comes to worst, it's just draw one card per turn. And how could that possibly be bad, right? Like it can't be bad. You're just forced to actually take actions.
Yeah.
And not you're forced to be proactive a bit more.
Yeah. The time that it could possibly be bad is when you're losing this thing. And then the prospect of not having your ability to deny your opponent anymore might make it a difficult thing to stomach, but it's not impossible. And there's times where you won't have this, but there's definitely times when you can make use of it. Okay.
Another factor or two that I would say you should consider is if you have reshuffled already. If you like, because this is a ceiling effect, if you have a reshuffle, then the ceiling isn't as bad. But if you haven't and you exceed before your reshuffle, it might be a little too early, I feel like, and because you're losing one usage of the card that you seal.
Right.
But sometimes maybe that doesn't matter that much. Maybe like sealing 2 cards for good, if you have a good timing for exceed, is good.
And if you're accelerating the game enough that you can kill your opponent quickly, you might be okay. But like if you were dedicated to the control line and the game is running long anyway, and then you decide to make the pivot to exceed mode too late, now you're actually really worrying about pressuring yourself out of the game. Okay.
Yeah. I think as a player, like I might slight overvalue and overprioritize like long-term plans. And in which case, like I will imagine, okay, what the end game looks like, right? Like in a game of chess. But a lot of times in Exceed, in certain characters and certain players, they will play proactively, and the game is just over before that. And all the thinking I did was completely useless.
Right, yeah, they ran you over
while
you were busy doing
5D
chess.
Yeah, exactly. Like it happens, and that's if your opponent's doing like this long-term strategy consistently, you should absolutely just like smork on them, man. And you just absolutely pressure them. Play like what's the terminology? Play smart aggro, right? Play like aggression, but with very deliberate intent to do certain things with the right strikes. there's a lot of players in our XC community like Rosa who does it like
Yeah.
very well, and I feel very pressured when I play against them.
Close your eyes and imagine what Rose or like Reggie, maybe Avusonian, like folks like that. Imagine what they would do with Umina and play her like that.
Yeah, and it's like okay, yeah, you plan for the long term. Well, the game is over. Okay, in those cases, I would say like, okay, maybe you should exceed.
Right.
Maybe you should just
Right,
like
because
keep up with the tempo. You know,
they're pushing the tempo of the game so high at that point that your control it's going to gum them up, but they're going to just by sheer velocity get through all of your shields and eventually like force you to interact. And maybe you should be proactive yourself in that case. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of that also depends on like what options have you used so far. Like if both hollow space are down, yeah, you're kind of defenseless.
Right.
If like copies of Dark Thoughts are down, okay, now they don't care about Dark Thoughts. Now they're gonna play more like their gameplay changes a little bit. Or again, someone like Akuma, right? That can just stun everything you do. Okay, well, that changes like your decision too. There.
Yeah, let's really lean into stun immunity maybe, or let's find ways to build an attack with these triggers that he just can't deal with, even with all of his crazy shapes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last notable thing is that the worst feeling, as Umina on Exceed said, is that if you top deck Shadow Chorus and you cannot put it into your
oh god,
because that's honestly the worst feeling I have playing this character all the times. When you this card cannot be placed in your Dreamland, and like the rules, if you look at the top card, you have to discard it, and that's just mill one, which is sad because this is a good card, right? So what I would consider is that if I do plan on exceeding, I would either exceed into the reshuffle with Shadow Chorus in my gauge or hand, so I don't have them in my deck, or some variants like I draw one copy of Shadow Chorus on my reshuffle, then be like, okay, it's fine to
you'll allow yourself to mill one because you have access to the other if you need it.
Yeah, so minimize Shadow Chorus getting milled out by this stupid counter synergy that this character built to have. Another rule FAQ is like if this is like in play, right? This transformation.
Yeah, this is.
You could technically cheat.
This is the one that I know about. Yeah, you can do some pretty wild things because at no point does your opponent ever have the ability to check a face down zone. It goes, it enters the Dreamland face down. It's never supposed to be in the Dreamland. You put it back to your hand next turn. They never had the chance to see it. You got another copy of Shadow Chorus when you shouldn't have gotten one. Like
rules enforcement.
Don't do that. But she does introduce some. This transform in particular does introduce some difficulty with tournament ruling. So if you are a TO, make sure that your players know that.
Check the Shadow Chorus.
Check that. Okay. So that'll make sense. And at this point, we've covered every card on both sides, I think.
About, yeah. I think that's
my last couple questions. Unless you have more before you want to move on. Mm-hmm. Last thing that I want to know about before we talk counterplay is what I'm doing with these normals. And for the most part, it sounds like we've talked about it quite a bit. There's additional pressure on my opponent's dives. I have lots of uses for reading. Stun immunity changes the math on a lot of these. Are there any other like important tech or important considerations with the way my normals work with my kit that I need to consider when I'm playing Umina, or is it mostly normals as normal?
Okay. That's a good question. So for the most part, sweep is for a lot part of the game is for part of the game is like I say early 20% is priority number one for Dreamland. So you're unlikely to boost it. I used to boost sweep on turn one, so I can like if they don't do anything, I can threaten this without worrying about dive.
Right.
But I feel like that's just slightly inefficient. You could do that still, I think, and it can work. It's just that you lose really hard to cross, and that's kind of not necessarily good to do. Right. So it's better it's just better to put in your Dreamland. But Focus is probably a better choice once you get past that initial stage, I mean, you could put focus there right away. Also, it's just personal preference. I want to hit them for a little bit harder before I switch to a focus
Sure.
set. Um, it's focus. Okay, so if we look at Shadow Chorus real fast, um, it also rewards if the card in your Dreamland is a has an instantaneous boost. So focus is the one card that kind of covers all those aspects of this kit, right? It um it benefits a lot from stun immunity. You can always play this, and at worst, you draw a card.
Right.
Very nice. Additional copies of focus becomes additional copies of reading. So focus becomes and sweep are both like high priority for the Dreamlands. Uh, assault and cross has their use cases too, and dive occasionally. These three cards I would never bother putting to Dreamlands.
Okay.
Let's see. Assault is good because if you want aggression.
This is. I mean, yeah. This is usually stun immune effectively anyway. This is does not care about stun immunity most of the time, and I have whiffed so many sweeps that weren't, or so many spikes that weren't stunned, that I don't think that stun immunity is really going to do much to Spike's threat profile. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's just like extra copy of Spikes doesn't make that much sense given her kit, anyways. Assault is nice, a nice way to get reliable hits. Assault is really important in matchups such as against Akuma, as I mentioned earlier, where you just want to trade damage and you just want the hit confirm. This becomes really good. Cross would be good if you need multiple copies of it for like a very high zoning, like maybe against like Zangief or something.
Yeah, run away a lot, or use Whispers in the Dark to chase down a zoner.
Yeah. Typically though, like Cross have I mean, these cards are not the same, but they serve very similar in repositioning defensiveness.
Sure.
So if I have options of getting extra hollow space, I'd rather get hollow space over Cross. So it's just slightly less prioritized. I still rather just play Cross from hand. Assault is like here. These are like kind of the priority. I think Focus is the most important. Sweet. By the way, most likely to be in Dreamland, least likely to be in Dreamland.
Yep.
In case
definitely.
It's not clear. And then Dive is somewhere in between. Dive is interesting with Stun Immune, because it essentially says you're not gonna hit me with anything super hard unless you have like a Speed 4's, like 6 damage attack. But it also catches your cross, and I also get myself out of corner. So Dive is very interesting in those particular edge cases, but also against certain characters that have a lot of strong boost kit, like Ryu potentially, where you just need extra copies of tech.
Sure.
But if you put Dive in your Dreamland, like your opponent just not gonna play anything techable, and they will obviously, and it's like really hard to make use of. Like some even Dive is kind of counter productive unless you're at range 1. So those are the kind of priority in terms of for Dreamland. And Umina is another complicated character because every card you have additional potential usage of putting them into Dreamland, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of actual card usage outside of that, block is good to boost a lot of time. While I do like this, I do like block versus character that plays a lot of boost, because you are neglecting all those boosts together with a single block. And this is not just for Umina. This is for all characters.
Sure.
Against someone like King Knight, block is like really important, right? They expend so much resource into a single attack.
Or even somebody like Seijun, who isn't necessarily boosting a lot, but they're investing so much in an attack that if they don't have an ignore armor button, you are even though you're spending a lot of force as well to keep from taking too much damage, they probably feel that force expenditure more.
Yeah, exactly. So this is block is so like that's across all character, like all anyone that's still primary usage of block. That's very important. But parry is extra valuable. I mean, just because of how much your information, like
what you can do with hand information.
Yeah. Sometimes you just parry just to look at their entire hand, and that's perfectly fine.
Sure. Without revealing your own.
Yeah. Like I parry focus probably most of the time still, but just because of old habits.
Sure.
But yeah, so parry has extra value in her kit because of the synergy with the rest of her kit.
Okay.
Let's see. Cross is always good for the defensive tool. I like Cross a lot. obvious. I mean, everyone loves crossing out of good attacks. Range 2, king of range 2.
But not everybody can threaten dark thoughts after they cross.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
that's very fair.
I think my cross usage, if you're cornered, you probably should get out the corner, but it's also okay just to spend 2 force early game with like a Call of
Right.
Dreamlands to move out the corner instead in this position. Um, then you can threaten cross and whatever. So that's all fun and dandy. So most of the time cross is an attack as always. Grass becomes better as a power +2 power, just because your stem immune attacks are very likely to land. So giving the extra power is very good. So I'm turning them aside, which indicate I'm more likely to boost them than to
Nope,
attack.
totally read you.
Um, dive better as a boost most of the time. Breaking armor and guard. Like if I'm landing a spike, I'd rather land a dark thought.
Right. No,
I
that's very
like
fair.
it's kind of silly. It's like this is like spike and sweeping one cards, and
Right.
it's like it's but notably this can potentially help you land some things like Call of Dreamlands more reliably at range 2.
It's also like if you don't have the stun immunity from a card
Right.
in your Dreamlands, this does like a
This
reasonable
becomes
impression of it.
Yeah. Yeah, Spike is definitely like a lot of character. It's kind of like a card that you don't really need. But you still it's kind of like a bad shape, but it's an important card in the overall theme is like okay, if you have Spike means your slows are not always safe. And
Sure.
it's important for a character to have that. But Umina has that inherently with how hard she hits in the first place, right? Where that armor and guard sometimes just don't matter. Like I don't need to ignore armor guard if I'm just hitting for 11 damage total.
Right.
I don't care about that. Or if I'm landing a very key transform. So this becomes significantly less important, and often I use this as a boost just
Okay.
to have a little bit more tankiness, live a little longer to get my late game playing going. Um, yeah, that's kind of unfortunate feature of it. Dive, pretty versatile, honestly.
Yeah.
Could be
I
used for
mean,
either way.
when you talked about it in the Dreamlands, you talked about using it
Yeah,
stun immune and using it as a boost. So you're probably going to see it
yeah,
both ways.
yeah. Uncornering stuff is super important. If someone dives in, they're probably gonna sweep you, and
Sure.
dive is
Get
nice
out
for
of there.
that. Probably. Maybe. Yeah. Assault boost is important. This is like the center. Like you're probably gonna be in zoning matchup. You're retreating a lot, but also if you need to attack, some immune assault with +4 power
Right.
is really nice.
If you're in exceed mode, it's much better. Like there's lots you can do with assault no matter how you play it.
Yeah. Depends on your opponent's aggression. If they use a cross boost to come in early on.
Right.
Now I know they can't really cross out on my range 1 assaults, or unlikely. I am more inclined to Dreamland Assault and start threatening these really heavy attacks. If that's the case, yeah, like it depends on what your opponent have used, but Assault is honestly like at range 3. This is your like fastest thing, right? Like you're on curve at range 3 no matter what, so it's kind of important to have that. You can't otherwise you put too much pressure on always crossing out or hollow spacing as a defensive tool. Um, and it's important to play around that.
Yep.
And we already kind of covered focus and sweep. Sometimes it's nice just in a matchup against an opponent that has so much attacks that you just play focus every turn. You just draw a card, have some armor,
Armor
not
through
stun.
stuff. Sure.
Yeah,
It is an
just
all-star of a card no matter what.
yeah.
Okay.
Same with sweep, really. But sweeps +2 speed turn on a lot of options such as cross, and cheeky out of mind,
Yep.
which then kind of could change your game plan. So sometimes you do want to boost the sweep. And yeah, these two cards obviously, as we mentioned many times already, most important normals, cross most defensive on as a shape, and then everything else is sort of utility and dependent on situation.
Yep. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like specific things you want to cover, but the normal usage, same with car usage is, yeah,
It feels very
as all things,
flexible. It's very
very flexible.
figure it out in the matchup. No, that's exactly what I was looking for. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
So my last question before we wrap this up is we've talked a lot about how scary Umina is. I know that I have a feeling that some people might just be watching this video for the last section where we talk about her weaknesses and what to do about her. So if you could talk a little bit about counterplay, dear God, Calavontis, what do I do to stop this woman?
Okay, yeah, that's a tough one. So a lot of Umina, it comes. You kind of have to understand, as in all things in Exceed and in any two-player fighting games, dueling games, understanding your opponent's ability to do things is pretty key.
Mm.
So if you watch this video and kind of understand and play as Umina and understand her kit, you will understand like what her toolbox really is, right? Notably, the defensive tools of Hollow Space. A lot of players, like first time playing against Umina, will strike at range 1 without clear plan against Hollow Space, and all of a sudden, oh, they're at range 4. I whiffed it. I lose a turn. I'm not doing anything.
Right. And now
Really
you die to
sucks.
Dark Thoughts.
Yeah, and now you lose to Dark Thoughts. That's really bad. Knowing to turn 1 dive her is a very solid play. It's another thing, positioning advantage, also just cornering her with the sweep to stop the free hollow space. Knowing that what she's trying to do. Because Umina is such a flexible, like it changes what she does so much throughout the game, and her like main lines changes constantly. In my opinion, you kind of have to change with it in order to like correctly hard counterplay her. A lot of times also like Umina might just fumble on her own like onto her like just like
Her
might be
own
her own
complexity.
undoing. Yeah, her
Right.
own complexity might be her own doing, right? Like there's a lot of decisions to be made, a lot of lines to go for, and she goes for the suboptimal line, and then like all of a sudden now you're winning, and nobody really understood what went wrong.
Right.
But in general, I would say you probably want to mulligan for block, right?
Parry Dark
And
Thoughts.
yeah,
Right.
Parry Dark Thoughts is such a safe move. It's a really nice move. And like if you can't get the parries, get the crosses. If you can't get crosses and dives, multiple cross dives, and block early on. But at the same time, it depends on the Umina player, right? The Umina player can be an absolute wild card. If they're on the play, they expect you to mulligan for block. They read block the Dark Thoughts turn 1.
Sure.
They just
Yeah.
take the gamble. Oh my god, like that would
Yeah.
like break my heart.
What do you
So
do about that? Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's
So maybe
also
if
it's like it's sort of philosophically like if Umina is a counterpuncher character who is concerned with controlling the matchup and denying your opponent options, like the counterplay to that is going to really strongly depend on what your character can do in the first place, because what
right.
she's going to do is going to be totally different. So
Yeah.
a big part of the counterplay is also going to be like just knowing your own character and what they can do.
Mm-hmm. It's like it's not by any means solved by
Sure.
it is very MU to MU dependent, and you have to really understand your own character to like if you have like key weaknesses that is exploitable, you have to expect that to come, right? Like Sagat knowing not to give her a free low tiger shot,
Right.
right? Not overcommitting on that low target shot gameplay, knowing when she has 3 gauge. That's a key thing. Or as like if you're playing Ryu, like Ryu is actually a really good counter against Umina in terms of match MU, just because of his shapes. For example, with Tatsu, you have that at range 1 before you advance to, right?
You can actually
So
deal with hollow space.
yeah, if you have +2 speed, +2 power way up the warrior, your Tatsu completely shuts down hollow space.
Right, and therefore
You know,
pretty much everything she can do at range 1.
Yeah. Obviously, Tatsu is a very strong card Tatsu with Way of the Warrior is a very strong card in the first place, but a primary way of Umina dealing against boost stackers is to be at range 1, giving hollow space,
Right.
and trying to get free economy off that. Now that's a thing you can do. So in that matchup, if I'm playing as Ryu, I'm not gonna boost Tatsu until hollow spaces are down. I'm gonna threaten Tatsu. Um, that's like things to think about. All times Umina might not be able to like identify the correct threat to counter. And certain characters like Zolt, which is a very strong character, obviously, it's hard to identify what actually to do against Zolt. I remember one of my I think it was the second Jungi Japes in the finals versus Zolt, And until that point, I had like so much like I could not win that matchup as Umina, right? I spent time thinking, okay, like how do I stop Zoe because once he exceed, I cannot do anything. And for the longest time, I always thought, okay, I just have to get rid of his cross up because that's his like transform that gives card draw advantage,
Yeah,
and
it's
that
card draw
should
advantage, right?
right. But that's not the case at all, right? I for the longest time I've been thinking the weakness, like I've been thinking like what to parry, what to deny, and I always think it's the cross up or even gunblaze or. But the actual answer is just the 7 speed range 3. I forgot. Is it Deadeye or is it
Fatal Eye.
Evil Fatal Eye?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
that's actually the correct card to get rid of. Um, and that took me like a year or two to actually like figure that out with testing on my own and actually able to execute it. Because in that matchup, once Fatal Eye is stolen and taken down, Zoe can no longer set up guaranteed advantage chains even in Exceed form.
Sure.
And it becomes really hard. And now like he cannot cross up reliably because you can count. You have your own
Yeah,
copies
you have
of
your own copy of Fatal Eye.
Fatal
He
Eye,
doesn't have a
right?
ton of guard in his kit. Okay.
Yeah, his cross up, his cross, those are reliable ways of getting gauge are no longer online, and the matchup becomes completely winnable, right?
Right.
Even though you don't think that card as like the ultimate, it also his like that's his way of starting the
Starting the
chain of
combo.
attacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, starting the reliable way. Denying that completely changed the game around. I think that was the first time I'm not I can't recall. I think it was either a very close game or I won that game as Umina for like the first time in that
Right.
matchup, like in quite some time. Okay, like going to the future, I'd be like, okay,
So
I know how to deal with Zolt now.
so in the context of Umina counterplay, kind of what you're saying is like I'm up against a good Umina player. They know my character. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to know exactly how, like to your point, it took you quite a long time to develop that line of play against Zolt. Like, don't expect your Umina opponent to have labbed out every contingency and possibility because Exceed is a complicated game.
yes,
You can
that's
still get
exactly what I'm
you can
saying.
still get away with stuff.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So
It takes also kind of know what the Umina opponent likes to do because different Umina players play very differently, in my opinion. And
right,
what I'm
and
talking about is just how I like to play it. But
Umina can counter pretty much anything if she has her way, but she can't counter everything at once. She's going to have to prioritize things. As she does, your other options will become available to you. So like, don't get paralyzed thinking that just because she can stop anything, that she will stop everything because she can't do it all at once.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Yeah, that Zolt tidbit is also like, also at the same time, I want to encourage people like this is like kind of the experience of playing her, like what you can do to like that's kind of the appeal of playing Umina, right? Like figuring out these like counter plays.
Right.
But yeah, like if you like against characters that doesn't have that much exploitable weaknesses like Ryu and or if they just have so many redundancy on the same thing that Umina can't repeatedly counter, then it becomes actually like not as bad. Like as long as you don't get like early dark thoughted, and you probably be okay. I think she can hold her footing in most matchups, but initially the effort is definitely on the Umina player to actually figure out what they're doing. Otherwise they lose. Otherwise they like very likely not gonna be able to pull it through. Um, but characters like Seijun, that just stat check you, right? Like
Right.
it just okay, cool, stun you immune. That's really interesting. All right, trade
Right.
7 damage with me. Like
Yeah,
it's like
that's
okay, like
it's super funny that Dark Thoughts is a six guard slow projectile. That's really
yeah,
safe anyway. Take 11.
yeah. Um, it's things like sometimes like just stat monsters. Like I mean, I can't deal with it. Like she has tricky tricks. But if
Right.
the stats are
Other than this
overwhelming, you
boost,
can't.
she has like no stat boost in her whole kit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And guards are over easily crushed. This can be easily outsped. Action compaction in season 7 can easily deny hull space setup. Um, I like yeah, people make it out her to be this like unstoppable control character, but honestly, like I think there are matchups. If once you understand what Umina's like limits are, you can really give her a hard time, and she immediately becomes less intimidating because she's scary because it's hard to know what she's doing, right?
Sure.
But once you get past that, you can
She is an Exceed
pinpoint.
character. You can play Exceed
Yeah,
against
she is
her.
an Exceed character. She has to play Exceed.
Okay.
She still have to win fights at the end of the day, I think. Um, but then again, like sometimes it's also deck order, right? Maybe she never gets her Dark Thoughts, and
Right.
that makes her hard. If she gets Dark Thoughts, that's like 30% of her. Like that's like a huge that like her win rate. I want to see stats on that. I want to see how
Right.
much win percentage of getting Dark Thoughts transform early on gives you, and I bet it's quite significant.
It's significant. I'll bet. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I think you don't have to worry too much because her a lot of times, one's Hollow Space, Dark Thoughts, or I mean Shadow Core is sort of. And normals are kind of like when these are contested, the rest of her attack shapes, you don't kind of care as much if you just outspeed those, right?
Yep.
If you were outtrade with those. Obviously, watch out for Call of Dreamlands, but if you're within range 2, like it's not that scary. It's not that safe for her to play. Um, I think there's I think all things match up. It's very matchup dependent, but I can think of plenty of characters I feel that would have a very good time against her, across every season. Um, yeah, I would feel like she would have like a very hard time against someone like Axel that
Okay.
just repeatedly run away, hit you from range.
Yeah. Not a ton of movement, not a ton of card draw. Is gonna
Yeah, like
fall behind on economy.
yeah, like sure, play your Sunny Moon Hollow Space, but like how many like at range 8 I'm not gonna be hollow spacing
Right.
anymore. It's not gonna it feels bad.
Okay.
I think the new 13 matchup is also really hard, for example, even though it's like yeah, you have this cool tool to deal with it, but eventually you're gonna run out of range options, and
Right.
if you don't play your cards correctly you're out of steam. And News once succeeds, she gets so much movement, she gets so much mobility, and it's not a good time. um uh, yeah, I say a lot of times I actually win because my opponents slipped up here and there. They missed out on the deck out potential. They forgot about invalidation mechanics. Um, yeah, like a cool part of playing this kind of characters is like your opponent probably knows less about the character than you do, so
For
like
sure.
a
Yeah.
fundamental edge.
You know more about Ryu than me as Ryu knows about Umina. 100% of the
Exactly.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
So really, then the counterplay to Umina, in order to make up that information parity, is play some Umina yourself.
Yeah, no,
And
I encourage everyone to do it. It's a fun character. It's a cool character. It's
yeah, and that honestly, like, I can't think of a better way to send us home here if we're gonna wrap things up. Like, hey, folks, play Umina a little bit, see what she's got going on. You might enjoy yourself. I definitely was like, this was a character who I didn't really vibe with conceptually. Not a big fan of control characters in general. So like, I definitely wrote her off as being not for Gearface, but I'm looking forward to revisiting
you could
her.
try the hard Exceed side. You could try that. And it might be very
I'll give
fun.
it a shot. Maybe I'll finally be the one to figure it out. But yeah, Calavontis, this was great. I really, really appreciate your expertise. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
Hopefully folks at home have a better understanding of Umina now and know to be afraid of her, but also to maybe give her a try because she sounds pretty fun. Anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up?
Nothing in particular. Yeah, I think overall it's just one of those characters, and that requires a lot of, just like all things in this game, all games in general. Just if you play a lot, it's like you'll understand her a lot, and it'll solve most of the problems that you have when you play against her and as her. And it's exacerbated by the fact that she's very MU dependent and very weird. So just play, yes. And have a good time if you can.
I feel like that's a universal advice to get better at Exceed.
That's
Now,
that's
anyway, instead of playing Exceed, I've devoted my entire Exceed career to recording these videos, which is why I'm still not very good at the game. Don't be like me. Go play Exceed. Calavontis, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And folks at home, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some stuff. I will see you all for I was going to say for the next one, for the time being, at least for the last one, I have one character left, and as we all know, there will be no more released Exceed characters ever. So until until season 8 comes out, the final Access Exceed lesson will be the next one. But until then, hope you all have a great day. I will see you all later. Goodbye.
Goodbye.